just went off the air.
Ready? Now bang
You-
the gavel.
Huh?
Bang the gavel.
Meeting is in,
Oh, meeting is in session? Yeah, we're learning.
All right. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bucksport Board of Assessment Review, it being 6:02, darn near on time. The Bucksport Board of Assessment Review is now in session for the purpose of considering an appeal pursuant to 36 MRSA Section 843, filed by Margaret Johnstone, from a partial abatement denial concerning the assessed value of the property shown on Bucksport Tax Assessing Map 14 as Lot 78. My name is Roger Huber. I'm an attorney with the Bangor law firm of Farrell, Rosenblatt, and Russell. I am here tonight representing the Board of Assessment Review. I do not represent the town generally. I do not represent the assessor. I'm here on behalf of the board, just sort of oversee and work with the board to make sure that the hearing is conducted fairly and properly. This board has not met, as I understand, in approximately 5 years. I know they received a little bit of training 5 years ago because I conducted it over Zoom. I think it was during the COVID era. So what I have offered to the board is that I might take a little bit more of a leadership role just to make sure that we get through the process. It'll serve as a little bit of on-the-job training for the board members. Hopefully it will make things go a little bit more smoothly. But to be sure, I am not a voting member. I'm not here to persuade one way or the other. I'm simply here to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, okay? And much of what I will do tonight is what a chair would do, and perhaps next time the chair can take over that responsibility. So let's get underway. We start with a roll call. Jacob Grandmason,
Present?
Jack Corrigan,
here.
and Joseph Davanzo.
Yep.
All present. The first order of business is the election of a chairperson. Would anyone like to move someone's election or
I
appointment?
nominate Jake.
I second that motion.
Get some experience. You're gonna get experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
get with the program, be authoritative.
The election of Jacob as the chairperson has been moved by Joseph and seconded by Jack. Any discussion? A vote?
Aye.
2. Jacob, I assume you are abstaining.
Yes.
We also have to elect a secretary, which is called for in your Board of Assessment Review ordinance. Again, just as I'm sort of stepping in first time out to sort of showcase the role of the chair, I will also take minutes and present and provide those to whoever is elected or appointed as the secretary. I can do that the first time around and show you what I think it's supposed to look like. So would anybody like to move the appointment of?
I move David should be the secretary.
You want me to be secretary?
Yes.
I thought you, fine. I thought you were gonna be secretary. Roger, you're not being secretary.
I'm going to fill the role tonight, but there needs to be an elected.
Oh, okay.
There needs to be an appointed secretary. I'm
Sure.
trying to relieve the
It's
pressure of serving that role.
It's important
first time
that you
out.
know what you're doing.
That's no problem. If you want me to take
Okay.
minutes, fine.
Yep, second it.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Before we get underway, because this is new for you all, a little bit new for the community at large, let me just explain what tonight is and what it is not. Let me explain what tonight is. No? Hi. Haven't seen you in years. Excuse me if you're on TV. Someone just walked in that I haven't seen in probably 20 years. Before we get underway, let me just sort of explain what this is about. Tonight is an abatement appeal concerning a specific piece of property, 53 Eagle Lane in Bucksport. I know there was a little bit of, I understand there was a little bit of publicity that this might be a hearing about more general tax issues, property tax issues in the town of Bucksport. That's not what this is about. This is a specific hearing on this specific piece of property, and while it is a public meeting, and I'm glad to see there are a lot of people here, the more people that attend and understand how this process works, the better it is for the community. It's not a public hearing. It's not an opportunity for people to speak up unless one of the party calls you as a witness and you happen to have relevant and credible information to prepare or to provide to the board. So if you were here to speak more generally, you're not going to have that opportunity tonight. But again, I'm glad you're here if that's the case, and I hope you will stay so you get a chance to see what it's all about.
Could I just ask a question about the publicity?
Sure.
Yeah, because it did mention in the documents on the website, and that you also forwarded that the town would be making a public notice and notifying the local media outlets. And I didn't see that happen, so I just made an announcement of that there was a meeting of the board, and it wasn't, it didn't invite, it didn't say that it was a public meeting to comment on anything.
Okay.
It just
That must have been what I saw.
made an announcement
Yeah.
and said this is the first meeting of the board in 5 years.
And that's what it is. So if
Right.
that's why you're here, fantastic. We're on our way. With all that being said, before we get underway, if somebody is going to testify today, we need to make certain that you are under oath. So I would ask anyone that intends to testify to please stand. And repeat after me. Do you solemnly swear in the truth on hearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, you may be seated. So the first order of business is to make sure that we have the entire record. In terms of the record on this specific appeal, the board received pre-filed documentary evidence from Ms. Johnstone dated January 8th and some additional documentation on February 12th. That's been included in the record and it's in your packet. We received some pre-filed documentary evidence filed by the assessor, Caitlin Eldridge. That was received on February 12th. That is also in your packet. And we also received a corrected version of the January 4th letter from Margaret to the Bucksport, to the board, that was received on February 14th. And I believe you and I spoke, and I will make sure, it was an
talking about
identical packet, but it had a couple of corrections.
Yeah, I think the one that I was concerned about was the email with the blue ink
Yeah,
that.
And everybody has the colored
Okay.
version that was mailed to them.
Right.
So at this moment, that's the record. The parties are free to submit anything else tonight. The record, the words that are spoken and the video will be incorporated as part of the record. If you have additional documents or electronic material you'd like to submit, that will be included in the record. If you have any additional documentation, that will also be included in the record, as well as any testimony tonight. So that stuff, when everything is all said and done, that stuff will be bundled up, put together, and given to the town as the complete record on this appeal. Make sense?
Yeah, are the board members gonna have a chance to review that this evening before they make their, because I have additional documentation.
And they will have, they will do whatever you ask them to do, yes. Okay, so, we've got a quorum. Witnesses have been sworn in, we have the record. The next thing is that you always have to make sure that the board has jurisdiction to entertain the appeal, okay?
Okay.
And with all abatement appeals, there's a number of specific deadlines, there's a number of hoops you have to go through. And I think it's always helpful to go through those steps, to confirm that in fact the board has jurisdiction. If the board does not have jurisdiction, then that's the end of the appeal. It has to be dismissed.
Okay.
So, and we went through this 4 years ago, but there are a handful of questions that will confirm the board's jurisdiction, and I'm just gonna go through, I'll just go through those. There's enough evidence in the record to support the finding of jurisdiction, but I think it's helpful to go through these. In order for the board to have jurisdiction, the taxpayer has to file a written application with the Board of Assessment Review, and the taxpayer did that on January 7th, 2024, so that's a yes. The initial abatement that was filed with the assessor has to be filed within the relevant time frame, under Title 36, 841. Here, the taxes were committed on August 24th, 2023. The law says you have to file an appeal within 185 days. That would have been February 25th, and here the appeal was filed on September 20th. So that standard has been met. The taxpayer then has 60 days to file an appeal from the assessor's decision. The assessor issued a decision on November 16th. The taxpayer then has 60 days, which would have been January 15th. In this case, the appeal was filed on January 7th, so well within the 60-day period. And did the proper person file the appeal? In this case, Ms. Johnstone is the owner of the property. She's the proper party. So there are a couple other questions that don't get triggered in this type of an appeal. So it would appear, based on the evidence, that the board has jurisdiction to entertain this appeal and that it should go forward. Okay.
Could I just ask a question about, so it's the procedure that whatever abatement that was granted because certain parts of my home were being double taxed, that's now taken away and added back to the original value, is that correct?
No.
Oh, because on the updated tax card, you did add it back on.
The tax card only gets updated once at the time of commitment, so the next time the value will change on the tax card will be when we commit taxes again this summer. So it shows on your tax account the abatement value, and then also on the valuation report, but it doesn't show on the physical tax card. Our software just doesn't have a way to update that information once committed.
Okay, yeah, because it's the updated, both valuation report and tax card now have the $405,000 assessment on it again, so.
The valuation report doesn't. The tax card does. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to update the tax card with that information.
Okay. All right. We're almost ready to get started, but this is super important. Tonight's hearing is de novo, which means we're starting over. The board is not reviewing the assessor's decision. The board is proceeding as if the assessor never made a decision. Okay? So we're not, it's just not an appellate decision. Did the assessor do the right thing? It's the assessor's going to present evidence, the taxpayer's going to present evidence, and based on the evidence that's presented tonight, the board has to make a decision. Okay?
So you can't push it into the future if we're not through by whatever time?
We can continue this meeting for as many times as is necessary.
Thank you.
I make this point just because there, having read through the record of the items that make up the record on appeal, there seems to be a little bit of this between the taxpayer and the assessor and the taxpayer and the town. That stuff is irrelevant at this point because we're not reviewing that decision. We're starting brand new based on the information that's presented tonight. So there's really no need to get into that. I mean, let's just focus on the numbers within the task at hand, because that's the board's role.
I just want to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, I just want to be clear, because this is all very new to me.
No, and that's why I'm actually going through
So
this.
everything that's happened up to this point is not relevant, you're saying, to whatever happens here tonight?
That
So,
is
is that right?
correct.
Ah.
That is correct.
Okay, that's good to know that.
It's just the way that, it's just the way that the law is written. Interestingly enough, and as an aside, not to take out much, when this board makes a decision, we'll put that decision in writing, we'll attach it to the entire record on appeal, and if the taxpayer or the assessor are unhappy, they can appeal that to Superior Court. At that case, the Superior Court will look at it at an appellate level. They won't take any new evidence. They'll just review it to see if you all made the right decision or a legal decision.
So everything I submitted about what's already happened,
No, they've got it. They've got it right here.
so they can consider that in how they come to their.
Correct. Everything that you've submitted, everything that's on this table, everything that you plan to submit, everything you're going to submit electronically tonight is what will be, what will serve as the basis for their review.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I mean, that's all stuff that's happened between September and now.
And that's totally okay. That's,
Right, so we're not gonna rehash it, we're
Yep.
just gonna go forward
we're
with the
just gonna go
numbers.
forward with,
Okay.
just so everybody knows, throughout this entire process, the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. The decision has to be based on evidence presented at today's hearing. The legal presumption is that the assessment is correct, and it is the taxpayer's burden to overcome that presumption of correctness. I kind of liken it to, somebody has to have the burden, and you have people are presumed innocent. Here, the assessment is presumed correct, and then somebody has to overcome that presumption. In this case, it's the taxpayers, and the taxpayer has that burden throughout the hearing.
I'm still not clear, are we dealing with the original number if we're not considering what has already been done, or are we dealing, I mean, this is important for numbers,
right.
isn't it?
Right, I know what we need.
Okay, Jen, that's good.
The standard is manifestly wrong. So the burden that the taxpayer has is that she has to demonstrate that the assessment is manifestly wrong. And I'm gonna read this, and I'll read it again at the end of the presentation, but I think it's helpful to read it now because it'll give you some context for receiving the evidence. Under the law, and I'm just reading this just straight from the case law, an assessment is manifestly wrong if the taxpayer demonstrates that the true value of the property is substantially overestimated and an injustice results from the overvaluation, or there is evidence of systemic scheme by the assessor to place a disproportionate share of the burden on one taxpayer or a group of taxpayers, such as by assessing certain properties of one class at one percentage of value and others in the same class at a different percentage, or the assessment is fraudulent, dishonest, or illegal. It's a mouthful. Don't expect you to think. We'll go over that again once the evidence is.
Now, substantially different between the valuations. What constitutes substantially?
You're gonna hear from the assessor. It's not a couple dollars.
Okay.
It's not a couple dollars. The word in the law is substantially overvalued, such that an injustice results.
Okay.
And what would that dollar amount be?
There is no dollar amount.
Okay.
There is no dollar.
And that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, there is no dollar amount.
But I had to
That would be
prove-
easy.
Didn't I have to prove that to get this hearing?
You,
That's what I was told, that I had to prove that it was,
you
To
have
get
to
the
prove
hearing.
that at
Here.
this hearing.
Here,
You're
right now.
entitled to the hearing.
Right,
The
right
law
now we're
gives you
doing
the
it.
hearing for free.
oh, that's not the directions I got,
Yep.
but that's.
Rules of evidence don't apply, technical rules of evidence. You're the chair, you get to rule on the evidence. If it's relevant and credible and not unduly duplicative, it should be admitted. If it gets to be, if it's off the, if it goes off in left field and doesn't apply to what we're, the subject of the hearing, it can be disqualified. It just has to be, it just should be credible, relevant, and not overly repetitious. So with that said, taxpayer first. And every chair has their own personality. You will develop your own, and you should. Yours may not be the same as mine. I always like to let the taxpayer go uninterrupted. The board can, and should ask questions if they're confused, just to make sure that they understand. The assessor will be given an opportunity to, we call cross-examine, the taxpayer and the taxpayer's witness. The board can certainly ask questions. And then the assessor will be given an opportunity to make an uninterrupted presentation. They will be entitled to cross-examine, and the board can ask questions at any time.
Okay.
So if I don't say everything right off the bat, then that's okay, I'll have another chance.
In my way of thinking, people, as long as the meeting doesn't go on,
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
become,
8 hours.
repetitious.
Right.
People should leave here feeling like they've had a chance to say their piece, so, with that said, if I were the chair, I'd invite the taxpayer to make their presentation.
Absolutely. You guys can begin with your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm just gonna say a few words, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Ms. Moran. So I just wanna thank you guys for being here this evening. You're my hope in finding some integrity in this process. And I do wanna say that pursuing and preparing for this hearing has come at a very high personal cost. That shouldn't be the case. One of the things that I hope to achieve tonight is a more fair and accessible process for others who may find themselves in my very uncomfortable shoes. Unfortunately, by the time I came to understand what I was up against, I tried, but I was too late to find a lawyer who specializes in these kind of hearings, so I would just ask that you bear with me. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a litigious person, I'm not accustomed to public speaking, and I am here under very hard conditions. As I've been asking since September, I'm here to ask you tonight to value and tax my property based on the facts and in proportion to the surrounding properties and in accordance with Maine law. And I'm not here because I don't understand the real estate market, and I'm not here because I don't understand the need to raise taxes and the dynamics between the state and the town. I do understand those things. I'm not opposed to paying higher taxes. I'm here because I want to pay no less and no more than my fair share based on the same standards as others and based on the law. That's all I'm gonna say for right now.
Okay. So I'm not exactly 100% sure where's the most appropriate place to start.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yes. Yep, my name is Jen Moran. I am a Brewer resident. I am a licensed broker. I'm a designated broker for a firm that I own in Bangor called Trinity Business Brokers. I'm not 100% sure where's the most appropriate place to start. Whether I divert your attention to page 90, which is the start of Miss Eldridge's memo. So I guess I'll just defer to you if I'm going off track, or if you want me to bring it a different way, please let me know.
You go whatever you think is
Okay.
effective.
Thank you. So I guess the first thing that I want to say is I had originally done a comparative market analysis for Mango, I believe, back in 2022.
March 17th.
Okay. And not for any purpose other than her wanting to have somewhat of an understanding of what the value of her property was. And what I understand happened is throughout this process, initially, when Mango started working with Miss Eldridge, she presented that what at the time would have been considered stale dated information. So as a general rule of thumb, anything over 12 months in the world of real estate is considered stale, meaning that the figures and numbers aren't as valid. And so I sat with one of the appraisers in my office to go through and compile an updated comparative market analysis. And what I've come to realize, though, is through this process of working with an assessor in another community, is that appraised value doesn't necessarily marry up the same way as tax value. So I want to say that I do understand that. However, if I draw your attention, the other thing that I want to say is there's a couple points on here that one I want to get clarification on, and one that says Ms. Eldridge indicates that she intends to stick to the facts of the subject property for the subject tax year, fiscal year 2024. And then she discusses a few different bullet points. One is, I was hoping I might be able to get clarity from Ms. Eldridge, where it says the town of Bucksport as a whole has achieved a certified ratio of 100% as determined by the state of Maine, meaning per standards all properties were valued at 100% of their fair market value for fiscal year 24. Can you just explain it to me in a little bit more layman terms?
Yeah, so there was some discussion about properties being assessed at different percentages of market value. Per the audit from the state of Maine, that's not the case. So we were able to achieve 100% market value across the board. So every property in town is assessed at 100% of their fair market value per our cost schedules and per the state audit that they do annually. So one property isn't being assessed at 75% of their total value, while one is being assessed at 110%. Everybody is at 100% in their assessment.
Okay, and how does that doesn't play into anything on properties that are sold?
Nope, so we only assess what exists as of April 1st each year. So April 1st is kind of the drop dead date for the state of Maine. So for example, if you were building a house and it's half built on April 1st and then magically it's 100% complete on April 2nd, we don't go back and tax you for that.
Okay.
Just like if it were to magically fall down April 2nd, we don't abate those taxes just for that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for that. So I guess what I would like to ask the board members is I'd like to refer you to page 97. This is a specific property that was pulled as a comparative market analysis that I had updated when Margaret had told me that the comparative market analysis was dated. I then prepared a second one with the assistance of an appraiser, and knowing that waterfront property, how many options there are, knowing that we need to stick within 12 months of when a property has been sold. So these are all comps that had sold within that appropriate time frame. So comps that would not be considered stale dates. So that means they'd have to be within the last 12 months. Ms. Eldridge indicates that this isn't a good comp and identifies the reasons why. And it is true indeed, this is a seasonal property. It is, it does have a crawl space. But what I'd like to now draw your attention to is if you would just take a peek at page 52. And this
5-2,
just...
I'm sorry.
5-2, yes, please. Page 52, this is a portion of the comparative market analysis. Specifically, it's referencing the property at 54 Edgewater Lane. And you'll see the adjustments for the comparable. So it says description and the, can you all see that section that I'm referring to? And it
Yep.
says adjustments for comparable?
Yeah.
Okay, so this right here tells you that because this was a seasonal property, these are the following adjustments. So roughly $57,000 worth of adjustments were made to this property to enable it to be considered a reasonable comp. And so I think it's important to point out, because although what Ms. Eldridge is saying is absolutely true, it failed to take into consideration the fact that there were adjustments that were made so that it would be considered more of a comp. And so what happens in real estate is no two properties are the same. Makes sense, right? But our goal in the industry is to try and get as close as possible to comparing. It's almost impossible to do apple to apple, if you use that analogy, but it's fruit salad. So the goal is to try and get as close as possible. And so the next page I'd like to draw your attention to would be on page 99. This also is a property that is a waterfront property. This specific property had also just a little over $51,000 worth of adjustments that needed to be made to this property. Now, keeping in mind that the goal was to find waterfront properties that are in this similar geographical area. So although, again, Ms. Eldridge pointed out that these items aren't an apples-to-apples comparison, by way of what we do as real estate brokers is to make sure that we can try and look at it as closely as possible. And so, hence the additional corrections. So on page 101, this is, again, the examples of what, identifying that this is not a comparable property. However, I can divert your attention to page 58, which shows that there were additional dollar amount compensations made for that to the tune of an additional $23,000. On page 103, I would not normally have chosen this as a comp, just given the size of it, because we utilize, as real estate agents, we utilize what's known as the MLS system, so the multiple listing systems. And if I were trying to help place a value on the real estate to sell it, this wouldn't typically be one. However, when we met with Ms. Eldridge at the property, it was discussed that this was a reasonable comp, so I wanted to find a way to do that, which meant I needed to actually dial back the property because it's much more significant than Ms. Johnstone's property. And so if you refer to page 60, we actually had to do deductions to match this property up. And so page 60, you'll see it's just a hair under $209,000. So those are actually subtractions to the property to determine where that, how that can be used as a fruit salad comparison, if you will. Before I move on to discussing the garages, I just want to ask if there are any questions that I can answer as it relates to any of the things that I just spoke to you about.
Either of you guys? Because you said page 60?
Yeah.
Yes, so page 60, where you see adjustments for comparables.
It's this page that looks like that.
Okay, so you're looking at that,
Yeah.
okay.
So you'll notice that this is the page where they're actually showing as negatives, and that meant that we needed to subtract. For instance, you know, we needed to subtract, this specific property is one that we'll explore a little bit further. This one's 23 Hollow Way, but because of you know, the above grade finishes, the square footage, the finished and below, there was a significant amount of deductions that needed to be made in order to use this as a comparable.
So you were saying that these houses are similar in comparison?
They're made to be similar in comparison by adjustments.
They're different, but they add or decrease value from the property based on whether or not it's better.
I
Yes.
don't know what
They're
she was
not
saying.
similar.
Yes, so, well, they are comparable market analysis. So if you look at page 25, 25 is the comparable, oh, wait a minute. Yes, page 25 is the, this is a comparable market analysis. And this is typically what a real estate agent is going to prepare when you're trying to help somebody understand what the value of their house is. And what happens is, now, are they comparables? Do they match perfectly? No. But what happens is, these pages that I spoke to you about, page 60 for instance, those are where you'll see additions or subtractions in order to bring them as close to fruit salad as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions that I might be able to answer?
I'm curious, what was the total that you had to adjust for that?
That one was 208,000. So, within this packet of information, so if you were to look at page, now I'm moving on to discuss one of the bullet points of the garage. And so on page 105 and 106, there's the subject property garage, and then there is listed 4 other comparable garages. What I was curious and I would like to know is, in looking at the MLS, these other subject properties, not the one at 53 Eagle Lane, which is Miss Johnstone's property, these other properties, the garages are in very close proximity. Miss Johnston's is 175 feet from her residence, and although it is a 2-car garage, I know that, and I can't even begin to say that I fully understand the difference between average, above average, below average, except for, you know, Miss Johnstone's is considered 100% average grade, and and the condition is average. But looking at all of the other ones, there's none. I'm curious. There's got to be more than 4 garages that are 2-car garages in the town of Bucksport that are going to be more of an apples to apples to comparison, that are average grade and average condition. And so I'm quite curious to know why there's only 4 garages and none of them actually meet the same criteria, because a part of what I'd like to know in looking at it is, you know, what's the square footage of it, because if we had an average grade and an average condition and her square footage is 1,408 square feet, if the other comparable garages that were drawn as a comparison were also of 100% average and average condition, I feel like we could better articulate what the value of the garage is. Because I don't know as though this is really helpful, because frankly, the one on 351 Duck Cove Road, which is on page 105, seems to be in somewhat of disrepair. 1495 River Road, it's very close proximity to the house, and it appears to be in good order, but the grade is only good. I don't understand what the difference would be, but I'm just curious, are there not more detached garages in the town of Bucksport that we could use that would be a comparison?
So I ran a report, like it says at the top, ranging from 1,100 square feet to 1,600 square feet to encompass her square footage in her 1.5 story garage, specific to a 1.5 story garage. And yes, it has 2 garage bays, but as stated in the documentation provided, it's a 6-car garage. So that the square footage plays a role in that. So you can see I listed out the square footage for all of those,
Sure.
the year they were built, and the grade and condition is how properties are depreciated in town. So it's, if you build something brand new, obviously it's going to be worth more than something that was built in 1989 that hasn't been maintained and is below an average quality.
Okay. I guess what I'd say, I was just surprised that there was only 4 comparable 2-car garages, and I don't have software that allows me to search that. So, I also would, when I refer back to the first page, on what says, I intend to stick to the facts of the subject property for the subject year, fiscal year 2024. When I review all of the comparables that Ms. Eldridge has included in this packet, which the page numbers would be 108, 110, 114, every single property that was included as a broker, I can assure you these are all stale dated. They're all dated from 2021. And what I find the most interesting is that the initial comparative market analysis that we provided, and I didn't know that it was going to be provided to Ms. Eldridge, that it was dated for 2022 and it was stale dated, and she pushed that back, yet I'm perplexed at why sales that were sold in 2021 would be the case of this, because in her front page memo she states that she intends to stick to the facts of 2024. So I frankly find any of these comps that she's listed in here as stale dated and not applicable.
I'm confused by what you're saying there.
Yes.
Because when it's listed here, it does state the current value also.
So, yes, and we're going to get to some current values of some items, but these are specifically, as Ms. Eldridge had pointed out with the first comparative market analysis that we provided that was dated in 22, she is now providing comparative properties that are stale dated. Now, I understand what you're saying, and we have a few properties that are very close to Ms. Johnstone's that I intend to show you next.
Yes, but this here is when it was sold, so naturally it would be 2021.
Yeah,
Now,
so
she
this...
does have it current value, so that's what I'm trying to get, trying to understand.
Well, yes.
You know, it was sold for 206, but currently the value is 240, according to the...
Well, this, so on page 108, for instance, this is 1189 Bucks Mill Road. That sold for $240,000 on 7/23/21. What I'm saying is that using this as comparables, I'm going to show you some properties that are very near Ms. Johnstone's, and maybe that will help clarify why I think. Additionally, why there is some manifestly wrong details. And so what I'd like to do, though, as long as, can I pull that over here?
look at the, value sheets and the stats for your,
I wanna find the
Demonstrating
Excel,
apples.
the Excel spreadsheet.
Go to the Google Chrome, I think it's open in, Google.
Thank you. Okay, so to me, when we talk about manifestly wrong, I'd like to draw your attention to, we can use 23 Hollow Lane as an example. 23 Hollow Lane, the tax card says that it's 1,458 square feet. Now this makes this, what I've done is I've actually divided this out so that this is only the building and not the full tax card. So right here, we're just talking about the building values. And then I've divided it by the square footage. So based on the square footage of these properties on the tax card, you can see that Ms. Johnstone's property, she is being taxed at roughly $277.80 per square foot. Now, a very comparable building, and I'll show you some photos in just a moment. This is, the tax card is correct, and it says that 394 Jacob Buck Pond Road is 1,404 square feet. This specific property, based on the building, is $140.77 a square foot. 23 Hollow Lane, which is a stone's throw from Ms. Johnstone's. This is incorrect. This is not the square footage of this property, but if we just take this for what it's worth, this value here, this says that this property at 23 Hollow Lane is tax assessed at $209.05 a square foot. To me, this is very manifestly different. Now, $277 versus $209. Now, 13 Hollow Lane, this is potentially, this, based on these tax cards, indicates that these may, that Ms. Johnstone's property and the owner of this property are potentially close in line, but there's such a large disparity between these. Now, what I would like to draw your attention to over here is...
Ms. Moore?
Yes,
Can I ask a question?
please.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Of Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Does that include the garage, or is that just the square footage of the, must be just
This
the
is
square
just the
footage?
square footage of the house alone.
Okay, and those other comparisons that you make, do those include garages or just
The only one that doesn't include a garage is going to be the property on 394 Jacob Pond Road, which my goal is to get down here, if you can bear with me for
Okay.
just another moment, I apologize.
Okay.
I've not done a presentation like this before.
No, you're doing just fine.
Okay, so now we refer to the MLS system, which is where we find, as brokers in the state, this is where we can go to find information. Now, this is where we help people buy properties. This is where proper square footage is frequently found. And so when we talk about manifestly wrong, the fact that this property at 13 Hollow Lane, according to the town, is only 1,096 square feet. According to the MLS, it's 2,308 square feet. The same thing with, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. The same thing with 23 Hollow Lane. You'll see here, 1458 is the square foot on the tax card, but the square foot is 2138 according to the MLS. Now, Jacob Buck Pond Road, that one recently just sold, that is correct. Ms. Johnstone's property, when she had bought it on the MLS, also says it's 1,008 square feet. So right here, you've got two properties that what's on the MLS is actually what's reported with the town. And what happens with appraisers, what they'll do is when they go to inspect a property, to do the appraisal, is they're required to measure it. And so I can't testify to whether or not it's accurate in the MLS or it's accurate in the assessing. Okay. So what I can say is there's a huge disparity between these here. Now, I am going to get to some pictures in just a moment, but here is what I have done a little bit of math, and it's difficult to do it based on, I did it based on the tax card, but I also did it based on the MLS in some instances because it makes a really big difference. The square footage, there's a big disparity. And so what I had done is I actually had, for the size garage that Mango has, I would typically use a $40,000 amount for that. So basically you take the value of, just see here, on Jacob Buck Pond, you take this $140.77 times the assessed amount. This really is, oh, I'm sorry, this is Mango. Bear with me here. No. I'm sorry, I'm failing here. No, okay, I'm sorry. This is what Ms. Johnstone's property should be valued at, based on using Jacob Buck Pond's financials of the way that the price per square foot, because she has 1,008 square foot. So based on Jacob Buck Pond, only the house, just the building, no outbuildings, nothing, the value should be, her value of her house should be at $141,896. Now, on 23 Hollow Lane, based on the tax card, her property should be worth $210. Based on the MLS for 23 Hollow, Ms. Johnstone's property should be worth $143. Based on 13 Hollow Lane, on the tax card, you'll see we've got the repetitive here of what her property should be valued at. Her property is being tax assessed at $404,000. That's a very big difference. Now, what I also want to say is the Jacob Buck Pond is a very similar style house, which is why I have chosen it. It had also just recently sold and closed in just the last couple of weeks. So I've taken and I've added the garage on there, and then I've also added a dollar amount for the land, because we are not contesting that the land is not valued accurately. In fact, when we look at all of the properties around Jacob Buck Pond and some of the other ones that aren't very far away, land values are all very much spot on. So we're not contesting that the land is in question. Indeed, her land is very likely worth roughly $125,000. So really, this is where I really should have said, Ms. Johnston's property is being tax assessed at $404,000, and really, once you make these adjustments, this is as comparable. There's a very large disparity between the properties. What I'd like to now take just a moment and show you is I'm going to show you just a couple pictures from the multiple listings system here. And this is the property that is, quite frankly, really probably the closest in alignment. My goal is to get to more of the inside photos, so just bear with me here. So this is more closely aligned with Ms. Johnstone's property. I will point out that this property is 1,404 square feet versus 1,008. All right, I don't need to go all the way through those pictures. I'd like to move to the next property. This one is 13 This is 13 Hollow Lane. So I think it's important to note that this is what I would consider likely a higher-end property with granite countertops, custom kitchen, hardwood floors, all things that I'm sure Miss Eldridge would say that these are important factors in her determining what a value of a property is. I'm going to move to 23 Hollow Lane. Ironically enough, and I honestly, we kept our discussions to just 2024 because that's what I understood what we were talking about, but this property was taxed, in 2023, was taxed less than Miss Johnstone's property. And so when I was asking earlier if I could have an understanding of 100% compliance with the state, this property just sold for $885,000. I would also consider this to have more of the high-end features, having the granite countertops and hardwood floors, fireplace. It also should be noted that this specific property has also has heat pumps, so you have an opportunity to have air, which I think also can make a difference for all year long. So this gives you an idea of this property. Now, I really
You should keep showing the whole property.
okay.
I feel that it's important to note that this was the assessor's #1 justification for the price she put on my property, which is in your packets. This is an apartment on the first floor of this property, which is not included in that square footage either, by the way.
Okay, so now, in all fairness, I think it's appropriate now, because I wanted to show these all in the light of the MLS, I am going to show now whenever this property was listed. This is not the way it looks now, but this does give you the feel, and I didn't want to not show this. But
I'd be happy to point out what has changed about it as well, since these pictures, if that would be helpful.
well, we have...
Oh, that's right.
Michael, is there a way that I can get, I thought I had, yeah. How do I get to it? That's,
Go down to Chrome and hover over it, you'll see the other instance, and it's gonna be the one for that. And it should be the top tab, yeah, click there, and then
okay, oh,
you
shoot,
have to click
okay.
on the purple, yeah, and then you should be able to find it, there it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So, what we did is we have prepared, an actual, just a slideshow of Miss Johnstone's property, just so that you can see it, and we start on, the second floor, then we go to the second floor, and we go to the basement. As you can see, this is a loft, which it's considered, not even a half story, but a quarter story. Now we move down to the kitchen. Yeah, we'll be moving down to the basement.
I mean, I'd like to point out while you're looking at the basement, it's noted that I'm in the middle of a construction project. I'm not in the middle of a construction project. I took out permits in 2019 with thoughts of adding a bathroom and finishing the basement. In between that time, and sort of starting the insulation, the basement flooded. I had some drainage work done, and it flooded again, so I abandoned the project. In fact, the only thing that I did that was not done in the house before I bought it, the framing you see in the back, that was all there. The only thing I did was add some insulation, which is still not finished, and somewhere in there you can see. And I don't know, and it's been sitting like that since 2019. I have no plans of doing anything else to it. As I say, it's dry most of the time, but not all of the time, so.
So,
I'm sure
how
you'll
do I
want to
get back to
correct
the
that on the
Excel
tax
spreadsheet?
card.
Click on that and then click on the right one, the right window. Yep.
okay.
And I believe it'll be the Excel sheet. Yep.
Okay, these are the photos from the garage, so in you know, and to be full disclosure. And that's, well, we've,
Patio?
yeah, that's the catio. What I would like to do is I want to go back to the Excel spreadsheet here, if I can.
Top left, second tab for the left.
Okay, thank you. You know, at the end of the day, I think it's important that when we talk about what are some things that are manifestly different, some of these properties that we showed you within the MLS as you were going through and looking at the pictures, those are according to the tax card, possibly similar size, but they're really not. I mean, the fact that 23 Hollow Lane is identified as 1,458 square feet, to me, that is manifestly wrong. At the end of the day, although Ms. Johnston's home is a beautiful home, it's a modest home. There's no high-end anything. There's laminate floor in many areas. The basement is unfinished, and it is not worth $404,000. And so, you know, I don't know if the right word is abasement. It's not asking the taxpayers to take on a burden of you know, the near $100,000 that I would potentially say that this is overtaxed. What she's asking for is for a proper assessment of the property, and for that to be right-sized. And so I don't know if there's any additional questions that I might be able to answer to help clarify anything.
I don't have any questions. Do either of you gentlemen?
You said the basement was flooded. Those are plasterboards that are up on the wall that was on, it's plasterboard that is up on the 2x4s or 3 that you have up. But they weren't damaged, or did you replace them? How come, if it was flooded, how come they weren't?
The basement floor flooded, and I continued the insulation project, and one board that had been done did have to be replaced.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I say something?
Maybe.
I mean, I just feel like while you're pointing out
Yeah.
and kind of giving familiarity with these properties, it might be, I'd like to, although I'm going to listen to the boss here, but I think it might be an appropriate time to mention, you know, what by law the state of Maine considers just market value. That is the assessor's job, at least described in the training manuals and in the state of Maine real estate tax.
Could you leave that up?
Oh, yes.
So you know, that the goal that Ms. Eldridge stated when she was at the site visit was, and I think this is the understanding of the town and that properties are supposed to be taxed at 100% of market value, correct? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that property, and I do have the numbers there, that property at 23 Hollow Lane, which Miss Eldridge used the asking price to stick a high tag on my property, sold for $885,000 on November 1st, and yet the new valuation for it is, just get to that, currently for the 2024, for tax purposes, is $460,840. Now I'm happy to read you the way the law actually clarifies this. That's a taxation percentage rate of about 54% of market value, just market value, and, you know, as I say, it explains here. I don't know, is this okay if I read a few things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to me, that's another example, quite frankly, of being manifestly
It's
wrong.
very manifestly
Is that 23 Hollow Lane is a stunning property, a quarter of a mile from your property, if that, but that it's tax assessed at $460,840, and Ms. Johnstone's property is tax assessed at $404,000.
Well, and maybe this is, I don't want to cut your presentation short, but maybe this is a good time to move on to Ms. Eldridge's presentation and
Okay, well, at some
get a
point, I
better
think,
understanding.
okay, but at some point, I think that it would be valuable to just read some of the actual law, because it's really clear, because I actually took the time to read the over 1,000 pages of training manuals, and there are a lot of different things that go.
That sounds awful.
It was terrible. The last 5 months of my life have been not worth whatever. Anyway,
30 of mine.
you know what, I came to understand why lawyers get paid so much. I did, I actually was like, okay.
Strike that.
This is why.
Can I ask, what I can't see from my angle is, at the end of 394, Jacob Buck, oh, that didn't help.
No, sorry, hang on here.
Must be 306. That must be the, is it your contention that the value of this property should be 306? Ms. Moore, I think it's.
Yes, I think that.
Is that the?
I think that would be, it is more than a comparative market analysis, but in digging in and doing it from this standpoint, that I believe that this manifestly is over $100,000 manifestly incorrect.
Okay.
And then, there's the piece of it, which I did get to, but I didn't read it, but there's also the piece of this picture, which, again, in the law, states, okay, you cannot, it is not legal to tax, for example, my neighbor at 23 Hollow Lane at 54% of market value, and to tax me at 100% of an astronomically projected possible market value, and then to tax 13 Hollow Lane at about 75% of market value. That's not, again, I can read the citations, but that's not the way that it's supposed to be done, and there are actual cases of law that are addressed that, for example, from Cumberland County Power and Light Co., and this is just one little bit of a bunch of stuff I think you guys might be interested in reading. But quoting from this citation of PT 102 Maine Property Tax Law, Cumberland County Power and Lightco versus Hiram, a taxpayer whose property is taxed at 100% of its just value, while other property is taxed at less than 100%, is entitled to have their assessment reduced to the same percentage of market value at which others are taxed. And then there's a couple other cases I've cited about that. So I think that's an important point to make, because.
Well, I think that it's the point of when we first opened of saying what qualifies as manifestly wrong, so.
I also wonder, maybe this is, I'm just asking the question, it just so happens that the owners of 13 Hollow Lane and 23 Hollow, well, the former owner of 23 Hollow Lane are here this evening. And I would think that they could probably, if they were willing, confirm which square footage is correct, whether the homes are, whether the information on the property tax card is correct or the information in the MLS. So I don't know if they want to do that or if that's possible, but they would know. Just to confirm which numbers are the correct numbers.
So, the word correct could be different if someone in the audience who lives nearby in your neighborhood, if you will, would have a different understanding of their square footage than what's been presented tonight?
Well, what's been presented is the difference between what's written on the property tax cards and what the assessor's basing her assessment on.
Can I clarify that? We have a little bit of a discrepancy on some of those numbers. So the square footage that's being pulled from the tax cards specifically is the base square footage of a building. And then it's used as a multiplier if you have a story and a half, that base square footage. So if you're using that 1,008 square feet, is then used as a multiplier for a story and a half. The 394 Jacob Butt Pond number is being pulled from the MLS, which in my record has a base square footage of 936 square feet for that base floor, and then is multiplied by a 1 3/4 story. So that's where those numbers aren't representing the true story for every property in the same way.
So what I think that you're saying, and I'm certainly not an expert, but the square footage is predicated on the outside or the inside dimensions of the building, not necessarily the usable space above it.
Well, so assessing is done on the outside of the building, and the way that it's entered into our software is that first floor, and then there's a multiplier that's used if you have more than one story. So if you have the story and a quarter, that multiplier is applied to that base floor, because there's no way really for me to get up on a ladder and measure your 3/4 story.
Why not?
But for example, at 23 Hollow.
And then on top of that, it's also done in a way that there's a principal structure. So if you have any additions, like the subject property has enclosed porch addition, that's entered as an outbuilding and is attributed to its own square footage, not the principal structure. So anything like decks, garages, additional one-story additions, those are all entered into the outbuildings with their own square footage. So
the only algorithm you use for the base building is buried in your math of that multiplier, whatever that is.
Yep. So it's just the base square footage from that first floor of the structure, and then times whatever you have. So she has a 1/4 and a half, so it's a 1/4 and a half of square feet versus a 1/4 3/4 or a story and 3/4 of square feet.
So those numbers may have variances with what your algorithm does.
Yes, so the number being pulled for 53 Eagle Lane is 1,008, and that's just the principal first floor square footage, not accounting for the extra 1/4 story. And then the square footage being pulled for 394 Jacob Butt Pond Road is all of the square footage, including that 1 3/4 story, not just the base. For me, in my software, which I have that I'm going to hand out to you folks as well, the base square footage is 936 square feet.
Okay.
So
Can-
what do
can-
you
can
do
we-
when the
let's-
first floor of a property is partially?
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I need to keep this, I need to keep this structured. And I know is there any additional evidence you would like to discuss, present?
I think the thing that I would like to say that I think that is most important is that we can look at the property that is almost right next door at 23 Hollow Lane and see that this property, here is tax assessed at $460,840,000, is nowhere close to what Miss Johnstone's property is worth. I mean, you
Nor
just
is it
look.
close to the sale price, which is just market value.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, and this is, of course, this is at an angled picture, and now it's not fair for me to pull up a picture here that's gonna show what this looks like here from this angle. They're not the same exact angles, so that can be tricky, but Miss Johnstone's property at 53 Eagle Lane should not be tax assessed at 405 if this beautiful property at 23 Hollow is only tax assessed at 460.
Okay.
All right, can we take
So-
a 60-second break real quick?
You.
Is it to use the bathroom?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
You are the chair. Yes, all right, 60 seconds. You'll have a chance to
Amazing.
cross-examine and/or go into your presentation.
You think I was pregnant too?
Sir, I waved you off
Oh, it's okay.
about 2 hours ago, and what I meant to say was just a minute, and then I never got back to you.
The only question I had, and this was more of like a timescale, because you said that this board will need to make a decision on this. However, it can be convened to the next meeting and the next meeting. Is there a timeline to make sure that something's done in a, I mean, the goal would be if we can figure this out tonight in the next 10 minutes.
The board has 60 days to make a decision. If it doesn't,
Make it,
it has 60 days to make a decision. We're still pretty early into that amount. If we start, God forbid, if we start bumping up against that, we will turn to the taxpayer and ask for a written extension of the time to complete the work. That's,
I thought this was gonna be done tonight.
I don't,
I just grabbed on to it because it sounded.
otherwise it's deemed denied, and that's not good for you.
Yeah, the thing I'm concerned about is this is really simple, and it's not.
But she needs to be able to.
Just a quick question, this is a live meeting, so everything you're saying right now is being streamed.
Yeah, I just hope
Then
that
live
the
inside.
point is getting across that she's not taxing it at 100% of market value, obviously.
I understand, but what we just did about this 460.
I think you guys are crushing it.
Well, see, I mean, this 460 and 405, it clearly is very different. You know, had I been better, I could have actually had them side by side. You know, been like, you think that this is $45,000 different? No.
Well, I mean, it's in the story, it's like, that's an extra story on top of it, isn't it? Because like basement first, second.
Fourth floor, one car garage, and a 740 square foot apartment, which is what's listed on the tax card, the 740 square foot. That's the, and then it's got a 1,200 square foot or 1,400 square foot full first floor, and it's got a third floor.
Well,
That's
at the end of the day, she's gonna have her opportunity to explain how she came to this number. And it's gonna be interesting seeing the reasoning as to how you can value this at 460 value.
I was like,
holding on to your life just value.
Oh, yeah, I was.
I was like, oh God,
That's why you're here.
yeah. It hits you fast, I'll tell you.
And if it needs to go further, then our gentleman.
And so does the thirst.
Here, I'm sure the service can administer.
I know, but I'm so thirsty.
Defendant, defendant's lawyer, but it's that. I don't think it needs to, I think this is a conversation we're gonna have. and
Go right into your presentation, your choice.
I think I'm just gonna kind of present what I
This is the
have.
first time as a board.
It's kind of a little bit of a cross, but it's not really.
But it's important that
presentation, I guess.
When I first served on the board, my best friend was Robert's Rules. If you don't have one, I did get my.
What's it called, Robert's Rules?
Yeah, Robert's Rules.
Robert's Rules of Order? Listen, unless you're a brewer and they give you one that's like this. That's what we're doing.
It's like the form and like what you need to do this and that. Yeah, it's
Or
It's a good thing.
download it on Audible and just listen to it when you're driving along. That's really,
it's a lot of weird stuff. Like this is what you need to be the most
well, you gotta have effective meetings.
Like everyone's hanging out there. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, we're gonna. Perfect. That's okay.
I don't know. According to the records, I am. You've got 3 out here that I don't have.
That one that I asked about was mentioning like 320 or whatever, you know, that's why I wanted to make that point, that the percentages even to be the same of market value. You know, I think that they're posting, that's what we can say. So, what are the problems? I'm gonna do my lawyer thing. I know you want to, but we're gonna skip that. You did a really good job preparing. So, don't over-lawyer.
We're not going to.
I didn't want to, but I had no choice.
Wait, okay, so 13 Lane was 1%.
Well, depending on which figures you use, oh God, that's in here somewhere. You know, I took the current value of that, averaging, you know, the 3 different,
What?
paper here.
Oh, yeah.
It was between 67 and 75%.
Oh. Sure thing.
Let's grab it in my papers.
Hold on, sure.
It's okay, just take your time.
It's in there right now.
Yeah,
No.
76%, and that's because I
Can you
took
bring your
the
dogs to work here?
average of on.
I brought Goose sometimes. He likes it.
611.
Ollie's not much of an office dog.
78%.
So usually, like when Mark's home and
Market value.
he takes Ollie hunting, I'll bring Goose into the office.
This one is 54.89%.
Yeah.
Hunting outside, all the smells.
And then she brings.
Yeah, Goose walks desk to desk getting pets. He prefers that for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is your closing argument.
No.
right here. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about this. That's my. Yep.
No, he hasn't.
I have the 4 members.
We brought him
Things
in.
have lightened
We're
up
not
in
gonna,
order.
no, we're not gonna go there.
It's in friends. They're our friends.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything.
I mean, I'm leaving this one here. I hope. Okay.
But nobody that was there when we were there is there anymore. Well, a couple, but nobody that just.
They're
I really talked to.
74%. I did his garage too. Well, I'm just keeping them in here. I mean, they're
ready?
numbered, I can't take them out.
Are we ready? Okay, and back in session. Are we still on?
Are we on? Okay. Yep, we're on.
I'll go for it.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Ready?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
You are good to go, Caitlin.
All right, thank you. So I think I'm just kind of gonna go right into my presentation / correcting some information portion rather than just a direct rebuttal. I think that'd be a little bit better use of time. The first thing that I would like to highlight is that the value on Miss Johnstone's property is $358,610. It's not that 400 something number. We did go through the process of performing an abatement and doing an inspection there and figuring out that there were some things that were listed incorrectly on the initial assessment.
358,610, I think.
Yes, yep, 358,610. So that's the value on the property now. So, and going from there, I have the same information just to kind of show a little bit better the information on the 394 Jacob Buck Pond Road versus the 53 Eagle Lane, just kind of showing all of the property tax card information rather than MLS versus property tax card information, and it shows the square footage, the values.
So excited.
Thank you.
Of course. So that just kind of shows the value based on the age for each, the way it's entered, which they're both entered the exact same. They're listed as a grade C, which would be an average property. So a C105, and that's to account for that both properties do have a couple of higher end things. They have nicer floors than your typical laminate or carpet, that kind of stuff, but they don't have enough higher end qualities to bump them up to be considered a good property, which would just kind of put them in a higher value. So both of those properties are entered the exact same way that way, and then you can see the different attributions that help. So 53 Eagle Lane has a little bit of a value added for some finished basement space. That finished basement space isn't considered complete by any means. It's entered as average, and then it's considered 20% complete based on the framing and the sheetrocking and the insulation that has been done. While it's not complete, it is still work that's been done down there to add value in hopes to use it for something other than a typical basement. And so as you can see, if you compare both of those sheets for Jacob Buck Pond Road and Eagle Lane, the two highlighted numbers, so 53 Eagle Lane, before you factor in the depreciation for age of the building, was, for just the principal structure, was $204,790. The 394 Jacob Buck Pond Road was $229,739. And then you factor in, you can see under there, there's the percent that shows the percent that is actually being assessed at, less the depreciation for age. And you can see all of those, the kitchens are typical, the baths are typical, the condition of the property is typical, the layouts are typical, they're all the same. And you can see that those numbers correlate to being pretty close to each other if we're going to talk about just the principal building structure for assessment purposes, versus MLS and tax and all of that. So it's all kind of the same information being used right there.
Well,
And then the biggest difference there will be the land, but the land, for obvious reasons, one is rural and one is waterfront property. So the other property I know that's been talked about a lot is 23 Eagle Lane. That's not a sale. As I had said, we assess based on April 1st each year. Our commitment date was in August of this year. So 23 Eagle Lane sold way after the fact of even committing taxes. What that sale does show me is that although we've made these adjustments for this year, we're coming in low. We aren't a state that finds fair market value based on a direct sales number. There are states that do. Florida, for example, if you buy a house for $150,000, you pay taxes on $150,000. The state of Maine does mass appraisal, so one property doesn't dictate the fair market value for everybody. It's a combined effort. So the 23 Hollow Lane sale will be included in the audit that's performed by the state this year. In my experience, it will likely be thrown out because it is such an outlier. Yet to be determined. The state will do what the state wants to do, if it wants to include it or not, but that's a sale that will be included in the coming year. It doesn't have any merit or bearing on cost schedules or assessing for this past fiscal year. And as part of that sale, I've looked at that property, and things will have been changed on the upcoming tax commitment versus this one.
Question, you're talking about 23 Hollow Lane?
23 Hollow Lane.
Before you said 23 Eagle Lane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The numbers are all so close. So yes, the 23 Hollow Lane sale was beyond the assessment date for this year. And like I said, that does have a lot of what's considered an outbuilding, so sheds, garages, decks, additions, all of that kind of stuff that's not in part in the principal structure. And so that all has its own value line, which you can see on those that I did give to you under at the very bottom there. It says outbuildings, additions, and improvements, and that shows you the value that's given for each of those belonging to each property.
Help me out.
Right at the bottom. So if you skip over to the valuation report, and then at the bottom it says outbuildings, additions, improvements.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep. And then that shows how they're graded, the square foot, and then depreciation and cost for those, or the assessed value for those as well. And that's what I provided as well for all of the MLS properties that were in the CMA that was provided as well, because information is different between assessed property and a real estate listing. So you can kind of see the breakdown. We don't just assign a $40,000 or $20,000 adjustment for a garage. It's done specifically by square foot, age, and condition. And that's property specific, and that's specific to every attribute to a property. So the principal structure, the decks, the enclosed porch at 53 Eagle Lane, all of those are included and have their own cost schedules and depreciate rather than a square number. I guess I kind of think maybe it'd be more beneficial to start with, if you have any questions that I could answer.
So from your perspective, you followed the same established logic that you've been operating with on all the properties that we've either visualized here or you've assessed through your process. It's just, in other words, the process does not change. It is the same process.
Yep, so the process is the same for every property in town. Where it kind of breaks down a little bit is, so, for example, when I started here in 2019, revaluation had just been performed in 2018 and actually had ruled out for that 2019 tax year. So the assessor before me actually did all of like the heavy lifting. He went out and looked at all the properties and checked to see all of the changes and all of that information. It was like a 4-year-long process. When sales started to go a little crazy over the last few years, our certified ratio, which is the number given to me by the state of Maine, and it's determined by properties that have sold in the past year compared to their assessed value. This year we were going to be coming in at a 66%, which starts to, if you get below a certain number for a certain number of years, I think it's 75 for 3 years, 70 for 3 years, it starts to affect your state revenue sharing, so the money that we get back from the state, and then it directly impacts folks who receive homestead exemptions, or veterans exemptions. So the way that those programs work is, if you own a home and you live there and it's your primary residence for a year as of any April 1st date, you get $25,000 off your taxable value of your property. The state then reimburses the municipalities a percentage of that. Obviously, the state isn't just handing out money to the towns, so if the state thinks that I'm only assessing you at 66% of your total value, they're only going to give us 66% back of that money. So then in turn, I can only give you 66% of your homestead exemption. So at direction of the council this year, we decided that we'd been low long enough. It was time to bring properties up to where their value is now. In that process, we hired a gentleman named Bill Van Tynen. He's been in the field for 40 plus years. He's done revaluations and cost schedule updates all throughout the state. He's very smart. He's a very smart man. And we're fortunate to get on his schedule for this year, so we didn't have to wait another year. He came in and used our information that we had from the revaluation, which falls in the correct time period, the time frame that is recommended is within the past 10 years. So we were one of those fortunate communities that had already done a reval. And so as part of that process, he looked at, sales and comparable properties, and he and I sat down and looked to see if, when he was done, the information was accurate with the current market, and it was. Unfortunately, we are coming in low again already. But so that was the process for that. And then when the tax bills went out, if folks had questions about their value, they called if they wanted me to come and they thought there was something wrong. I would come inspect the property and see if there were any changes in the data that I had, if they'd made any changes to the property or anything of that nature. And it's been nice to have that because I did start here in the fall of 2019, so I didn't get a lot of face-to-face time with folks before the world shut down. So that's one nice thing that's come from this. But the good part of assessing and falling under state guidance is that everybody is handled the same way. In every municipality, there's the same guidelines given to every assessor so that you're not kind of walking into a community blind. And then with the development of the CAMA systems, the one that we use is called Trio. You are able to plug those cost schedules in and make sure that folks are being taxed fairly across the board for like properties.
So, there is a time lag between when the state decides and you get the data and the property is sold or evaluated. So there's definite gaps in time.
There is.
And you can't, you operate under the direction of the council to keep this up to a certain level.
Yep.
And the 66% is given by the state. The state just comes up with however they choose to come up with a number. Okay, so I understand the context. But I think we're going to be asked to understand the appellant's issue with subjectivity. And my questions to you is that, and you respond that the process is the same.
Yep.
And the subjectivity does not come into the process because you are fixed according to how the algorithms are put together, how the council decides to move it up.
Well,
or
so
down.
the council doesn't decide. The council doesn't decide on, like, how properties are assessed. The council decided that they wanted to go through the process of updating our cost schedules to be in line with that 100%.
Okay, now I got that.
Yep. So then, how that works is the data is input into our Trio software. So we have cost schedules, and then it breaks down to building type, and then we also have zones in town, so different zones allow different things. So if you live downtown, you might have some different property restrictions than you would out on Jacob Buck Pond Road. So all of those different zones can attribute to different levels of value as well. So that's how it kind of breaks down in town, building types. So if we ran our cost schedules and we found that raised ranches were selling for an exorbitant amount of money than what we have them assessed for, but Cape Cods are selling for way down on the list, then you can adjust both of those to be in line with the current market value based on their type of building. So it's trying to be fair across the board.
So is the type of building part of the subjectivity on the part of the assessor?
Yep, so if you
Okay.
look, so it's not subjectivity, so there are manuals that tell you what a building type is,
Okay.
and you can look at things like that. And then all of that information is included on something like this valuation report, and it shows you how something is classified.
So back again to my question about the process. The process is the same.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
No matter what.
no matter what.
Got it.
So if you had two identical properties, they would come up with the same value.
Yes. They have the same exact square footage, same exact style, same exact finishings,
Same
everything.
condition.
Same condition, same neighborhood, all of it they would be worth the exact same amount of money. And that's the beauty of the CAMA system.
Well, you're in a hot seat sometimes, aren't you?
Well, yeah, like tonight. But yes, do you have any other questions about process or anything?
The value of the garage, since it was brought up that you only use 4 garages, but I can understand because the garage is huge. It's larger than the house, larger than a lot of people's houses.
Yes.
So it's hard to find a garage that is that large also.
Right.
You took a process up of what it'd be to replace the garage.
I did.
And using that replacement as the value for the garage?
No, so the replacement value would be the replacement cost new. So the value of the garage on the property as it stands, it only sets at 88% of its total value per our software, because of the age of the building and everything depreciates to a floor. And it hasn't reached that quite yet. So the cost included for the building of a garage would be what it be if that garage burnt down today and somebody replaced it.
Right.
And that's,
So you don't account for restrictions on the garage, such as it being located 175 feet away from the house versus being attached to the house?
well, I specifically included in the comps only detached garages, whether that be,
But the distance
50,
doesn't
no.
matter, it's just
It's like-
detached versus attached.
yeah.
But it does matter for someone searching for a home, if they're an older person and they're gonna live in Maine year-round, whether they want a house that's a garage that's 20 feet from a garage or 175 feet per garage.
But you knew that when you bought the place.
I don't know what to do
Okay,
with the value
okay.
of it.
Then
But
may I
there's
ask them a
a,
question?
there's also a
Or
document.
not to that point?
I'm sorry, it's.
I'm sorry.
It's
No, that's okay.
You're entitled, yes, you can continue to ask questions at
Hey,
any
yep,
time.
you can.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt.
No,
you.
I'm just kind of here to answer questions at this point. I think that might be a better way to get information across. I think maybe it might be a better way to absorb some information, and get.
I'm just confused. I want to make a proper decision, and I've actually read all of this more than once, and I know, Jacob Pond, you described the roadway going to your property filled with holes and not being plowed, yet you don't describe that from Jacob Pond Road. It's a tar road going down, and that is always plowed. It's plowed, and then you have the dirt road where you make a right, one road straight to the person's house, and then make a right, and you're going down to the dirt road to the boat launch, and then your property is back on Eagle Lane, but that's private property, so the town wouldn't be responsible for plowing that at all. When they told you that it would be plowed, maybe you might have misunderstood, or maybe somebody said wrong, but it's the tar road, which is a great asset, because Jacob Pond is a private area, and and it is the privacy of that area that gives value to certain homes there. And the only reason why I say that because I read I have to find it. Do I? So many things, and you use, you put it in here, you didn't mention it tonight, but piece of property in Hudson, Maine, that's on a pond, on a lake, and its list price is $209. Yet Hudson is quite far away. And right here we have in Dedham, on Molson Pond, there's a piece of property that's up now. It's about 900 square feet, and it's about 3 miles from the toll road, and it's listed for $300,000. It's seasonal too, since it doesn't have indoor plumbing. So I'm trying to get comparison between what was sent to me and what is being presented here today and what I see out there on the market.
I do also have 2 properties that are actually located in Hancock County that are listed for sale today, for sale, that are comparable.
I can hear.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
And as an aside, I would caution the board not to consider evidence that has not been presented by the parties.
Okay.
I mean,
so
I know
I will
the,
look at this, that's again, but I'm not asking any questions, I just want to ask you for what I'm doing. This was sent to me.
Oh, no, I don't
and,
think that's.
I didn't take one.
I'm sorry.
You didn't take one?
I didn't
Or it
take
was
one. I
just
thought
they
it
should
was
take that
not.
into consideration.
No, what he's presenting shouldn't be in, this is
Oh.
presented
I
by
gave that
this is
back,
presented by a
Bryce.
member.
I misheard it.
I'm just,
Thank you.
Thank you.
did somebody send you something?
I'm saying that in the material that was sent to me,
Oh, that's all fair game.
okay, so I'm relaying a property that's in here that was listed in Hudson, Maine.
I saw the Hudson, I didn't see a Dedham property, but
No, I'm saying I'm comparing where there's something close by, why pick, that was just a question, why would anybody want to use a property over from Hudson when there's a similar property right here that is that wrong? I won't go any further, you have to let me know if I'm not doing wrong.
He's questioning why the comparables that were chosen versus.
and that's totally fair. That's
Can I
totally
answer
fair?
that? I'd love to answer that.
Oh, I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we allow
Okay.
the assessor to finish, and then we'll treat that on rebuttal.
Sure.
Make a note of that so
Yes.
we don't forget.
Uh-huh.
So to Mr. DeVanto's point, Hudson is in a completely different county. So these are properties that were listed for sale.
Goes in those ways.
Yep. So these are properties that were listed for sale today. Here's one in Orland, which is right next door, for $469, and then one in Ellsworth for $395. And you can look at those and see whatever information you want to grab from them. They're similar square footage. One's a condo style. It technically shares land with other buildings. One has 1.3 acres, so that's just a little bit closer of a comp if we wanted to get specific to the waterfront comparison. In more localized area. And we didn't have any for sale in Bucksport today, so.
I'm dying for my turn. to
This
speak.
was an order, you're saying?
Unbelievable.
I'm moving right. That's a camp too. So my only question would have been, and I don't know if it's necessary, it was just I was trying to figure out all this information that was sent to me. And since you said you know that the property on Dedham, in Dedham on the pond there is listed for $300,000. So I just trying to figure out why that wasn't used as opposed to using the one all the way up in Hudson, which is so far away, you know. And the one in Dedham is not even a half an acre. It's 200 feet of waterfront, and it's seasonal. And also, there seems to be description that was sent to us on the usage of the garage and what it can or can't be used.
Yes, there's a letter provided by the code enforcement
Yeah.
officer of an allowed use for that garage. And and as well as there was a permit pulled for finishing the basement in 2022.
So it could be used for boat storage.
Yeah, there's a whole
Animal
list.
storage.
Yep, so agriculture, animal husbandry, home-based healthcare, home-based productions, home-based professions, home-based trades, home vehicle services, pet enclosure, recreational facility, and vehicle storage.
So, question on that, by home base, does that mean just someone from the home working out of it, or can actual clients or customers visit the location?
Luke?
No, the public can't come.
He's,
Right.
well, we had asked folks from the neighbors if they could attest to the square footage. This is our code enforcement officer who directly speaks and wrote the letter. So that's up to you guys, I guess, to determine if you want to hear from him or not.
I am not gonna even go over the other ones that I've looked at to try and figure out what was being presented here. So I don't know if it's, it may just confuse people.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The word home,
Mhm.
like you,
The home base.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if that's a thing that is considered a benefit to someone who wants to buy it, or because it's quote unquote home. I'm not sure it's even relevant.
Yep, well, there was a question about what was allowed,
For the use of the.
for the use of the garage, as an argument of why the garage isn't worth what it is. So this is a list of things that are allowed uses for that
Right.
space. Yeah,
And under the law, the value of the property should reflect the allowable uses.
Right.
Consistent with zoning, consistent with code, consistent with, all the other limitations that are restricted covenants, all sorts of things. But the value is supposed to reflect all available uses.
highest and best use is
Yeah.
technically the law that you're supposed to follow.
Would you like an explanation of home base?
Yes,
Yeah,
please, yes.
So the ordinance lists home-based,
You have to say who you are.
I'm Luke Cavelli, code enforcement. Home-based is a type of business that you can have at your home where I believe it's no more than one other employee travels to the property other than the homeowner. So when I had my gun shop, that was a home-based business. When Stevie had her massage business, that was a home-based business. So customers did come, but it limits the amount of employees that are allowed to come there.
Okay, so it doesn't limit the customers, just the amount of employees on
Correct.
site. Okay.
I believe that when that garage was built, the original owner intended for it to be an auto service garage.
Right.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
I'd like to add the fact that when I bought this property, I inquired as to whether I could have a summer art gallery in the garage, and I was told I could create art in the garage and store art in the garage, but that no, I could not have any business, and I could have an art gallery in my home, but I could not have members of the public, customers, coming to a business at my home if it were not in my home or attached to my home. That's what I was told.
Luke, could you weigh in, please?
There's a difference between a home-based business and an assembly space. If you have an assembly space, such as a gallery, where you could have large gatherings of people, then the fire marshal gets involved with sprinkler systems and all sorts of other requirements. If you're having an art gallery where you're just having an occasional couple people come in one at a time or whatever, then that's not a problem. But
So it's the difference between customers coming and going versus customers coming and spending
Correct.
significant amounts of time hanging
Correct.
out.
And if with the sprinkler system, let's put in all the regulations, and then the garage may be able to be used in that. But the
It
way it's
could, but
made-
it would
it is
be-
now, it cannot be.
cost, the cost would be.
Prohibitive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm not going to that, obviously,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to clarify so I can understand it.
So home base is not it doesn't connect with industrialized manufacturing or anything like that. It's just
No, you
a
could,
very narrow
you could have a
view.
little manufacturing thing where you're making ice fishing traps or whatever, and you could have an employee that came and helped you, and,
Yeah.
you know, you could have a woodworking shop, or you could have a machine shop, or
Yeah.
all
Boat
sorts of
storage,
different,
use of
yeah,
boat storage, or
anything
use of
like
boat
that.
storage.
Correct.
Thank you.
There is a piece of, just a short paragraph that comes out of the training manuals for assessors that actually addresses garages and outbuildings and their cost schedules and how that might figure in. It might be useful to read that. It's just a couple paragraphs.
Page, is that in the?
You should
No,
keep
we-
that on rebuttal.
Oh.
Do you have any additional?
Not unless you guys have any other questions, any other information that you're looking for.
And I know you had a witness,
Do you have anything?
may or may not.
I can weigh in on, there's a lot of apples and orange and fruit salad regarding assessing and appraisal, which I have done both. If anybody
That
has
is
any
true.
questions on the differences between the two, I have functioned in both worlds, and I would be happy to.
Actually, yes. Could you weigh in on the difference between assessing and doing it versus the real estate method?
I can. So my name is Lorna Thompson. I have held my real estate sales license and also my real estate appraisal license, and I've been a certified Maine assessor for 30 years. The gentleman that she had do her cost schedules actually helped train me. He is one of the most highly respected assessors in the state. So, and I have had the opportunity to mentor Caitlin. We worked together in Orono. She was my assistant there. So mass appraisal is what appraisers, is what assessors use versus appraisers, like you say, look to have sales within the last 12 months. So there's quite a bit of difference between how you look at that. Mass appraisal looks at all the sales that have occurred within the municipality. And as Caitlin indicates, we get audited every year by Maine Revenue Services. They come in, they compare the assessed value to the sale price of what they consider arm's length sales. Only sales with willing sellers, willing buyers, without any external circumstances. I didn't know you, you weren't my brother, it wasn't a bank foreclosure, and they compare those and they do a statistical analysis. You've heard her speak about ratios, and that's how the ratio is established. So where appraisers and real estate salespeople look at the market on a really close, 3 months would be great if you're doing an appraisal and you can find sales within a 3-month period, yes. They do different adjustments. Like she was saying, $40,000 for a garage, boom. Whereas assessors do a square foot cost adjustment. So there are similarities in the business. We look for similar information. The MLS lists things very differently than traditionally our Trio software does. We look at a number of components. The ones that primarily affect value: age, size, quality of construction, how well it's been maintained, desirability. Is it located next to a pig farm, or is it somewhere with a beautiful view? All things like that, appraisers also take into consideration. But we look at the market on a broader spectrum. We lately have had wonderful sales. I'm sure real estate people have loved the sales that have happened. So it allows us to have enough sampling to do that statistical analysis probably within a year's time. Where sometimes in Maine history, I've looked back 3 years in order to get enough sales to do a cost analysis. So we take those sales and we break them down to like properties, and we establish square foot costs. Now, it would be really handy if when real estate sold, that it sold for, I'll give you this much for your garage and this much for your land and that much for your front porch. It doesn't really happen that way. So we have to allocate costs. And maybe sometimes we get it right, maybe we don't, but we look at that total final value to see if we're in the realm of reality. Is that a logical price? So when we look at the analysis that she had up there saying, well, the land is on, but we think the building is off, the property doesn't really sell that way, and there haven't been any land sales here in that area to be able to fine-tune that down. So that's a little hard to deal with, whether you're an appraiser or an assessor. You both end up trying to allocate value to components which may not always reflect that particular component's contributing value. So I don't know if that helps any.
Anybody have any?
Did I confuse you more or help you?
It's, real estate is very confusing process.
It is, it's very
And I understand what
complex.
you're saying.
Yes.
It's very complex.
So even though you talk and use similar adjectives to describe an entity,
Mhm.
the view of the entity is based on different set of eyes.
It is, they're both opinions of value. We both give opinions of value, but we come about it a little bit different when you look at it from a mass appraisal perspective as opposed to an appraiser perspective.
Right.
So instead of a few select homes, you're looking at the broad
picture.
range as
Yeah.
a whole,
It's not a
and then
box
coming
score.
up with the statistics for that.
You got it.
based
We
on-
are only allowed to use sales within our jurisdiction. We don't go beyond the borders.
It's like sales versus marketing, one versus many.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Right, so it's not a one-to-one. If you lived in California, it would be one-to-one. Whatever you paid for it, that's what your tax bill would be. But we don't do it that way. It's more about averages
Mhm.
for us.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good then.
So maybe this is not exactly a good example, but just to clarify to myself and make you understand things. House is contingent now on the River Road, and the house is right on Route 15, yet has acreage that goes down to the Penobscot River. So that's not listed, and wouldn't be fair to list that as waterfront. Since the house itself is not on, house is all the way up on Route 1, and there's a railroad track down along the river, so
Yeah.
that's why it has, looking at value-wise, it's not as valuable as someplace else with that railroad track, and you're not
Yeah. So-
half a mile away from the river.
I'm not exactly sure how Caitlin's cost schedules were determined, because I was not part of that process, but you would kind of look at it like desirability. When I'm an assessor, I go into a property and look at it, and I'm like, what is great about this property and what's not so great? So I always try to be that buyer and what's desirable, what's not desirable when I'm doing my assessment. So in the case that you give, that railroad track between me and my waterfront, that would be undesirable for me.
Very much so.
Well, and for example, there are ways to, if you have something that maybe isn't the most desirable, for example, at Ms. Johnstone's property, she has some negative influences on the land attributed to her property. So the first acre has a negative 5% influence to account for that access and location issue with the heavily potholed dirt road that's not maintained by the town. And then she also has a negative 10% influence on the rest of the land value for topography issues, because it's not just flat right down to the water for her. She does have a pretty steep driveway that goes down, and the garage is set up a little bit higher than the house, and you have to go down another hill to get to the water. So that negative 10% accounts for that kind of rolling topography that she has there. So there's a way to account for those negative influences on a property as well, rather than just sticking a blanket number on something.
Unless there's a bidding war.
Unless there's a bidding war, and then you never know what's going to happen. It's all out the window at that point.
Any more questions for me?
No, thank you.
Margaret, I'd like to say that I feel your pain with reading all those manuals, because Caitlin and I had to do the same thing and pass the test. So I really understand where you're coming from. It's pretty dry reading.
It is very dry.
Anything else?
No, I don't have anything else for her. All right. Can we take another 60-second recess real quick?
You don't have to ask. You're the only one in the room that doesn't have to ask.
Stop drinking Dunkin'.
Running on Duncan.
And you two have been very patient. You're up next. Sort of a rebuttal.
I know.
Watch it back over
No, that's all for you to do. It's good to do.
And
So I gave him one
you
too.
should probably note that you don't have
You mean I'm not getting paid for this?
I actually did read
The only
it.
thing-
You know, it was hard.
This is straight
Because you lose
directly
track.
from the MLS. I mean, I can derive reports from it easily.
It's funny that,
Is this showing up on the?
Lorna, I think you want to talk.
This is
So
on
you
the
printed it out
web.
first?
This is right on, like, I went to the MLS website, and it's live on the website. So I would need to, I can email each one of these.
No, I got this
Is this in
mail, and I got this in the mail. I got it in the mail, signed for a live stream.
Yes.
I got,
Are they seeing this?
Yes.
I got an email.
I have no idea.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yes.
And they are seeing this.
Yep.
Did you changing all this
Yeah.
well enough?
Yep.
But,
Yep.
I got this in the mail.
Chart. That one you must have. That wasn't mine.
Yes, yes, I can.
That whole place is about 5, right? Camps, right?
Yeah.
It's on the shore waterfront.
Right.
All right.
Part of the community.
Yeah, get 9 acres of condo style.
Everyone ready?
Yes.
Meeting back in session?
I've been biting my tongue. Okay, so I wanted to address your question on why using a Hudson property. And I will let you know, and it goes back to, I'm sorry, I don't recall what your name is.
Lorna.
Lorna.
I don't remember yours either.
What we did is we identified similar bodies of water, so similar depths, similar size, and that is why that specific location was chosen. And it's also in it is in a rural area, and I will say that I understand what you're saying. However, the body type is very similar to Jacob Buck Pond, that specific body type. So that I wanted to make sure I could answer that question. The other thing, Ms. Eldridge, that I wanted to say when you were talking about Ms. Johnstone's finished basement, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about $1,500 that you're talking about when you're talking about her finished basement?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure because it seemed like maybe I was missing a larger dollar amount. I also just want to ask, when we're talking about, and Lorna, you just mentioned this as well, is that for sale properties are not something that the town takes into consideration, yet this last flyer that you passed out is actually live listings for properties that are for sale. And so I guess I just, and I understand you just explained that it can be very confusing on both sides, but that seems a little like,
Yep, so those were just an example of what the Waterfront market is looking like today. If I had anything from Bucksport, I would have pulled that, but unfortunately there isn't any. And that was just to kind of show what our cost schedules look like versus live data now. For example, compared to 23 Hollow Lane selling for a lot more than its assessed value, these properties, as you can see, are quite high. So when I made my comment earlier that even with our cost schedule update last year, it does look like our property values are still relatively low compared to the current market.
And I guess I want to ask you because, again, so here's 23 Hollow Lane. In 2023, the building, this property, was tax assessed, just the building, not the land, at $124,000. And in 2024, it is now tax assessed at we'll call it $305,000. We're gonna round up there. When we're talking about large disparities, I don't think that this can't be overlooked. This needs to have the consideration of this, is that there are absolute errors in how things are being done right now, because there's no way that this property, which of course now we all know sold for $885, not to mention it was for sale for $925, but it's sold for $885. And you're talking about this property, and then we take a look.
Real quick on that, like I said before, that's a sale that happened after, and it's already been looked at for the coming year. I can't do anything about that for the past tax year.
But you used that number, which is in all the documents, the asking price of that property, to tag my property.
I referenced that was something that was for sale in town close to you. It was never used it couldn't have been used as a comparable sale for the cost schedule for your property because it wasn't even listed for sale when the tax bills went out.
It was listed in early May. and
Right,
you used
but it
it.
hadn't
You used the
been
asking
sold,
price.
and the way that
That's
it works in the state of Maine is what exists as of April 1st each year.
In your letter to me of October 26th, you used the asking price of that property as the number one justification. Everybody has that email. I can pull that email for why you valued my property the way you did. But those are your words in your email.
It was used as an example of what's for sale in the market right now, but there is no way for it to have been used to value your property because the sale hadn't taken place yet, and like I said, April 1st is our drop dead date in the state of Maine. So that
I would ask you guys to review those emails because I didn't make them up, and that's what you said.
But, and I guess I think I also want to just draw a point that for 2024 taxes, that this property, Miss Johnstone's property, is the building alone is tax assessed for $24,700 less than this property. I just don't know how this isn't manifestly wrong.
the property value has been adjusted based on the abatement that was granted. So that's the value on the property, not the $405,000 whatever dollar. The value on the property, the building value total, including land, or including principal, garage, decks, all of that, is $234,350.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The total
The total of everything is $234,000?
for the building value, yes, $234,350. And then the land value is $124,260.
That's not what it says on the.
Well, this is a tax.
On the value,
that's
well,
not
like I
mine.
explained earlier, the tax card doesn't get updated after we've committed taxes. The valuation report that was provided, it shows right there at the bottom the total value of all.
Well, I would like to just add a little bit about some of the questions that were being asked about garages and how to figure those in. Because, you know, the assessor turned in a sheet of what it would cost to rebuild the garage and accounting for 20 years ago or whatever. But it's a little more complicated than that. There's a little more nuanced in that. And I don't blame you guys for not reading through those 1,000 pages of documentation on the Maine.gov website, but, you know, and I can't synopsize everything that's in there. There are chapters on this, you know, there's a lot of different variations, as I say, nuances, and there are facts, many of which are wrong, just numbers are wrong on these cards, but then there are also situations that involve, you know, judgment and nuance and using critical thinking. So that is acknowledged, and I'm just going to read you very briefly, but this is from page 62 of, I don't know, it's part of PT 103, I guess, or PT 102, I'm a little confused with this. Yeah, PT 103, Valuation of Real Estate, Maine Property Tax Training and Certification Manual, revised in September 2022, and it just notes, and as I say, you can look at that document and get all into the weeds within it, but the overview is that reads, like other improvements, the cost schedules for garages and outbuildings reflect the value these items contribute to the whole property. Often, miscellaneous structures cost more than the value added to the property. Therefore, it is important when assigning a value that those values be viewed as the amount they contribute to the entire property, not the cost to acquire and installed. So again, I mean, I think if you use your common sense, you know, it's great that I could stuff 5 or 6 vehicles in my garage, but I have a 1-bedroom home. So, you know, I think a little common sense. And I don't have farmland. I don't, you know, I can keep animals in it, it said. I can do animal husbandry. I have 2 acres of woods.
You can't
What's that?
Is your argument that the garage has no value or
No.
detracts from the value of the property?
My argument is that the garage does not add a whole lot of value to the property. I'm not saying it has no value. It has some value, but it certainly does not have the value of a rebuilding cost. No.
The value attributed for the garage is not the same as the rebuilding cost. The value for the garage is $56,948.
I think one would weigh,
And that's not the rebuild cost.
The rebuild cost was around $142.
Okay.
one would need to weigh the fact that the garage is oversized, so theoretically you can put lots of stuff in there. The hundreds of thousands of dollars that one would have to invest to turn it into a machine shop or turn it into some sort of income producing thing is not the number to tax a person on. The fact that it's 175 feet, I can tell you, I have a broken foot. The demographic of people who are moving to this area tend to be older people. My 12-year-old car has sat outside the door of my house all winter long. It's too far. You might find it a little too far to add a whole lot of value as a garage. I certainly don't think it adds the value as an attached garage. And I'm just pointing out this from the training manuals that in a broad way suggests that there are a variety of things to be considered when you're valuing a garage. I think the most useful and likely thing one would do with that garage, which I did inquire about, if one were going to borrow and invest a big amount of money and try to turn it into an income property, would be housing. And housing is not something that, I think Luke confirmed that, correct? That I cannot make an apartment, I cannot have any kind of housing in that garage.
One question I do want to clear up, and is it Jennifer?
Yeah.
Jennifer. So I've already established with her that she only changes value based on attached or detached. Now, when you're doing your appraisals on properties, do you change the value other than just attached or detached, or do you adjust for value based on the exact distance that the garage is from the house?
There's no assigned distance or not. However, that is taken into consideration on a value. Is there any steadfast number that's typically used? The answer is no. However, it's less desirable. I think we all can agree it's less desirable to have your garage be 175 feet from your home. We all want to have it so you pull in your car, you get out of your car and you're in your house or very close to it. I think that there is a little bit of a detractor to that, but I think that to me the end point of this is does not seem to be. I understand that by way of the report of 100% being compliant with what the state, the certified ratio of 100%. I will find it hard to believe that if you look at the difference and you look at what Ms. Johnstone's house is and think that that's worth $404,000 and tax assessed. Well, I'm looking at
$358.
So I'm looking at, this was the most recent document that we got that, and maybe help me
Well,
understand.
that's, like I said, that's the property card. I can't update those based until after commitment. So
Okay, yes.
the valuation report is what shows the active data after the
Okay.
abatement that was filed and all of that information.
Got it.
Did you change your valuation of the property based on the presentation from 240 to 306,000? Is that what you said during your
No,
portion?
so when I look at it, I prepared a comparative market analysis, trying to identify similar properties on similar bodies of water, because when you try to go to just keeping it to Bucksport and Bucksport alone, there's very limited comps that you can choose that are going to be waterfront. So the first one that I did, in fact, didn't include hardly anything for waterfront at all, which was another point of Miss Eldridge to say that this doesn't even include waterfront. So the second attempt to try and say, okay, let's find waterfronts that are going to be in similar communities that are going to have similar bodies of water. And so from that standpoint, it's literally similar size bodies of water, similar depths. So, you get the same kind of feel for whether you're using it for water sports or whatever the case may be. And so that's hence the reason for that outlier property.
I'll ask you a question later.
Yeah, no. Does that answer your question?
So, kind of, but not really.
Okay.
So, in your actual CMA, the updated
Yes.
one, what was the valuation of the house?
Well, it gives a range.
It does,
I
it
put the
gives,
mid-range,
it gives a
no.
range of, I think a high of 282, something
Now-
along the lines of that.
And that's my question, because on the spreadsheet
Yep.
that you had, it said based on that, you're
That's-
saying it should be 306.
So that would be based on a combination of what the properties very close to this location. So that is using the tax assessed value. It's using the tax assessed value, what the value is, and the square footage to determine how far off is Miss Johnstone's property from neighboring properties. So based on the tax card,
Based on the square footage that is present
yes.
and the,
On the reality.
Well, that's true. So,
That's very
see, and I feel like it's very different. Like, I own a house that was 1,050 square feet, and I just spent $100,000+ putting on a 20 by 20 addition and completely renovating the lower levels. So now my house literally doubled in size, and so I am certainly taxed more as it relates to that. So I'm not understanding myself why it's just the footprint, as you're explaining, Ms. Eldridge, why it's just the footprint, when the reality is, to me, it's going to be levels that you can live in. So I'll put my kids in the basement, right? Like, so to me, it's usable space that you can actually live and occupy, have a family room, you know.
So like I had said earlier, it's the base square footage and then the multiplier of the 1 1/4 story dwelling. I don't have a way of going up and going floor by floor. So if you had living space in the basement, there's a section that allows for living space in the basement. The principal structure is done by the base square footage times the multiplier of how many stories you have. So Ms. Johnstone's property is 1 1/4 stories.
But I have to point out then, that for example, at 23 Hollow Lane, which, okay, if you look at it this way, it's got 3 times as many bedrooms, it's got 4 times as many bathrooms, it's got twice as many kitchens, it's got almost 3 times as much space. Its footprint is 740 square feet, according to these formulas or whatever that assessors use, or whatever, because the first floor of the house, a third of it about is a 1-car garage, and so they're only using the 740 square feet that the apartment is. But then there's a full 1,200 square feet at least
above.
first floor of living, and then and then a second floor of living.
So below grade is
it's
assessed
not
as a
accurate.
different way. So that first floor, that's the grade level of the building, would be the square footage of the building. Below grade, for example, there's a section for basement garage to add value for because a raised ranch, for example, if you have half of that undergrade area is being used as a garage, you can put in that you have 2 garages in the basement. And it adds value for it that way. So I think that the difference is just that in assessing, we kind of tend to break things down by value attributed per each specific thing. Real estate doesn't tend to do that. It's sold for this much, so another one similar would sell for this much. They don't have a cost schedule to break it down the same way that we do. So when you look at it, you have to look at what, for example, all of the outbuildings bring to value for the property as well, because it's not included in the principal dwelling square footage.
And that formula is used for every house, all the properties in Bucksport.
Yep.
So it's not that.
Right, so if you had a 2-story house
So
and
if you
then.
didn't use that formula for one house, then you would be granting special privilege to one
Correct.
house, and everybody could step forward and say, hey. Okay.
Correct.
Then just a question. You said you had a difficult time finding property similar to this in Bucksport, so which is why you want to look to Hudson. So then that would mean that the privacy and the value of this property is worth a lot more because it's so hard to find. These are your words. It can't be interpreted that way. That's why I'm asking you, is that what you meant?
No. No, that's not what I meant.
There are not very many
Just wanted to ask that.
two-room,
I had to ask
one-bedroom
it because I
houses.
wanted to be fair.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is a one-bedroom,
With a loft.
one bath house, with a, yes, with a.
Very small loft.
It's
a loft.
it is a loft, but I don't know as though you could even put a full-size bed in it without bumping your head. So I think that, yes, I mean, I think I desire to own a waterfront property at some point. However, what I would say is that the buyers for a one-bedroom, one-bath home that doesn't have a finished basement, is not, it's not because there was not an ability to be able to, because it's so desirable. My point in sharing that with you is because my understanding after the first conversation that Ms. Johnstone had with Ms. Eldridge is that this didn't even include waterfront properties. So then the natural thing would be for me to go in and say, can I find waterfront properties in Bucksport? The answer was there's very little inventory that has sold that would be considered not stale dated. So with that being said, my decision to do that was based on working with an appraiser to choose a specific body of water that was similar. So I'm sorry if you understood that. I want to make sure that it's clear that my intention in using that property is because there's so few comps that have sold in Bucksport on that similar type of a body of water within a 12-month period that would be considered as a viable option. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not against you using that as an example, nor am I against you going outside of Bucksport. I understand that.
Yeah.
My point was simply that because we had to do it, I mean, I had to go, because I took a very sincere effort to read all this and to make opinions, and I just wanted to make myself clear.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be prejudiced one way or the other without making sure that I understood everything that was presented. So I understand that it is, that the privacy does add value, which is why I had to go all the way up into Dedham on the lake there, 2 properties, and one on Otis Pond, above Ellsworth. And they're both valued more than this, and they're both farther away. And that's because I understand that there's the difficulty of finding land that is going to be sold on a lake, and I just wanted to make, understand the value involved.
For sure, and I think that's why the property values for this specific property, the real estate itself is valued at almost $125,000. So there's significant value. There's significant value in that land for sure.
I have a question. Okay. So we have an appellant and we have an assessor, and right now it looks like $100,000 assessed value variance. I'm not sure that I got every single penny in there, but I heard the 404,000. I heard the 100,000, and that it seems, I think your side said the 404 seemed about 100,000 more than it should be, based on the data that you articulated. So, from the board's perspective, we don't have to go by the science that you go by, or the documents you presented. The board can say, we think this is the fair tax assessed value.
So to clarify,
It's not 404.
the property is valued at $358,604. Okay, not the 404.
Someone said 400.
Well, that was what it was prior, and then an abatement had been granted already for the property.
Whatever it is, I'll scratch it right off.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that you knew.
All right.
358 now.
358,610. Get that number right.
I got it.
So an abatement had already been granted for the property. So that's the value on the property.
But my question is, the board comes up with some kind of decision, plus, minus, whatever.
No.
No.
Okay, this is super, super, super important,
Yeah.
okay? So, the board's first job is to determine whether the taxpayer has met her burden to prove that the valuation is manifestly wrong. If the board determines that she has not met that burden, that's
Done.
the end.
Okay.
If the board finds that it is manifestly wrong, then it goes into phase 2 and settles and makes its own determination as to what that number should be. Don't fall into the trap that many boards do, that just start talking numbers.
Right.
That, because that's not how it works. You first have to find that they satisfy that burden. And that's why when I started, I said the assessment is presumed to be correct, and they carry the burden.
So, do either of you gentlemen have additional questions to make a determination on item number 1?
I'm sorry, but I'm still not finished with some things that I wanted to say, and I thought I could answer to you.
You should make sure that the parties are both complete, and then we'll close the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, right here, that's.
Okay, so it's really easy to get lost in all the, and there's so, I mean, I have stacks of papers more that I would love to make points on. But there are some really, really simple principles here, okay? And again, these are from the documents that explain Maine real estate tax law and train, you know, the assessors in what they do. So this is quoted from the training manual PT 103, Valuation of Real Estate. The goal of any valuation procedure that's assessing these properties is to establish just value. So all these different ways you can do it all figure in, but you're trying to get to just value. Just value means market value. Market value is the price a willing buyer will pay for a property offered by a willing seller with no additional influences such as the need to buy or sell quickly or the sellers being related to each other and that sort of thing. Assessed value, or the value of property according to the local assessor, must be based on just value, but it doesn't have to equal just value. Assessed value can be equal to, greater than, or less than market value, as long as all the other properties are in the municipality are valued at the same relation to market value. For example, if a property is assessed at 85% of market value, that property is also assessed according to just value if all the property in that municipality is also assessed at 85% of market value. And I'm just going to continue a little bit. Is that clear? It's clear. It's what a property will sell for. All taxes upon real and personal estate assessed by the authority of the state shall be apportioned and assessed equally according to the just value thereof. This paragraph is interpreted to mean that all taxation must be fair. Just value is equal to market value. And again, it goes on. Municipalities can determine whatever they want. I think it has to be 70%, but if they, you know, are taxing my neighbor at 75% of market value and they're taxing my other neighbor at 110%, that's not allowed. That's not. Would you agree, Mr. Huber, that that's?
You are absolutely correct.
That's right.
That's
Okay.
the correct statement of the law.
So there are some case citations here. These are very short. That read from Cumberland County that I've already read. Power and Light Co. versus Hiram, a taxpayer whose property is taxed at 100% of its just value. So say it's taxed at 358 or whatever tonight's figure is. While other properties are taxed at less than 100%, is entitled to have their assessment reduced to the same percentage at which others are taxed. And this goes on. And that's not happening. and that has not happened with 23 Hollow Lane. That's not the case with 13 Hollow Lane. There, I can give you a whole bunch of properties across town where that's not happening. So when you're figuring that, you know, $358,000 figure, you not only need to take into account whether my home is actually worth that, you also have to adjust it according to and so that it is taxed at the same percentage of market value. And the very best and most certain way of determining market value, which isn't always possible, but when it is, and in this case it is the recent sale of a property. And that's happened 4 houses down from mine.
To be clear, 23 Hollow Lane will be in next.
Well, it's not right now.
The coming commitments.
And 13 Hollow.
Comparison properties. It unfortunately couldn't have been included in last year.
But that's why I asked the question on process.
Right. Yeah.
But
So it's the same process every
date
year.
of April 1 is very important.
Yes,
Because it's the same for everybody.
for everybody.
And the fact that it's being brought tonight, that a property not too far away from yours, sold for an astronomical,
Yeah.
big money.
Yep.
So,
That will have effect. That will have an effect on this coming April 1.
so,
But if you look at those sheets going back to 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, they didn't get corrected. I mean, I guess there was no sale, but if you look at those, I've been taxed disproportionately, and that's what I said in my original request for abatement, and that's what I said in this additional request for abatement. The taxation has to be proportionally accurate. That's the law. And that's not what's happened in my whole 9 years of living at 53 Eagle Lane.
Yep. So 23 Hollow, the sale at 23 Hollow Lane, definitely sold for an exorbitant amount of money. It's already been looked at for the coming year for what was different in the sale listing versus what was different in my data. The bottom line is that just because 23 Hollow Lane may or may not have been incorrect for this past year doesn't make 53 Eagle Lane incorrect.
Well, but you based in your own letter to me, that was your number one reason for valuing my property the way you did. Do I need to look at that email?
I think at that time it wasn't sold also, it wasn't sold, and regardless of if it were sold or not, this property that is up here is dramatically different than the property at 53 Eagle Lane, dramatically, day and night.
Yep.
And their tax assessed difference in 23 in any year prior is teeny tiny amounts. And that's just one example. And so I would just implore you to identify what additional research that needs to be done to make sure that those that live in the town are taxed properly.
So that
because
was
this
part of
doesn't
the
seem like it's
process
fair.
for this tax year. That was part of what was identified of when I started here. It was my first commitment was as COVID was starting. It was kind of determined that by powers that hold more power than I do, that we weren't going to start chasing sales and start changing things. We held off on those changes so we could make sure that we weren't, hurting people in the thick of it. As things started to kind of level out where they are as at their inflated prices, that's when we decided to make those changes. So I didn't make any changes to any properties in town in any of those prior years unless they had on additions or demoed a property or anything like that. That's the only time that property saw changes prior to this year. So that's why in those years prior, if somebody had come forward and asked questions then, it could have been addressed then, but unfortunately it was not. And now with the changes that have been made, it's been brought to light, and then with this current sale, that will be something that's addressed this coming April 1, as part of the sales ratio analysis.
If I could add into that, with sales ratio, with statistical analysis, you have outliers. You work with a central quartile of information. You're always gonna have properties where somebody's a really good negotiator and gets a really good deal, and you're gonna have properties where I just want it and I don't care what the price is. So that's why when we look at sales, we look at the statistical analysis, the center quartile, and not the outliers bylaw. So that sale may not come into play when the state does the audit. It may be determined that it's an outlier and too far out.
So the state can discard
Yes, as a sale, yep,
at will,
yes.
if they say it's out of, if it's outside of the bell curve, if you will.
Correct. Whether it's high or low, they can throw it out.
Is there anything new?
Well, there's a new picture that goes with my property that I
need to do that.
found interesting.
You don't need to do that. That's not helpful.
Okay.
Anything
there's a
new?
lot more.
Non-listeds, any other questions?
I recommend you close the hearing, and then we'll go into deliberations.
Okay.
Hearing closed.
Okay,
so
we
we
submit more evidence, or?
No, the hearing is closed.
We just listened.
I have this whole pile of additional evidence. I thought that,
I just asked you if there was anything new that you had.
No.
You don't. You don't.
So the deliberations in public, my recommendation is always for someone to make a motion, and that there be a discussion on that motion.
So moved.
It's sort of, and I'll make them, I've got a motion that I've written, I can read it either way. I always, and I want to say this, I want you guys to hear it, I always phrase it in the negative because they have the burden.
Okay.
So it's not an indication, I literally wrote this before I even came, before I heard anything. So I phrase it this way so that, because they have the burden. So
certainly do.
it's just to start the discussion going. It is not it's not a recommendation or anything else. Okay. So a proposed motion to get the discussion going. The taxpayer has failed to carry her burden of proof to demonstrate that the assessed value of map 14, lot 78 is manifestly wrong, and therefore her abatement appeal is denied.
So moved. Needs a second.
I think you were the second.
You don't, you can, it needs to be moved and seconded and then discussion. If you move it or you second it, it doesn't mean you're gonna vote in favor of it necessarily. It's just, it's just to get it up.
All right, second.
Robert's Rules of Order that
Got it written
is
on the
more
phone, yeah.
intense to listen to on the radio. So now it's a discussion, and I would encourage as full a discussion as possible. I'll take the lead in writing the decision if that's what you so authorize me to do. But in order to do so, I need to understand why you all are voting.
Don't look at me with we.
Why we are all, no, well, it's nice to hear from each of you so that, it's just makes for a better discussion and a better decision. So,
You're doing a great job. Really.
I said I'd write the decision, okay? You already got it. So at that point, it's now, it's a discussion for you all to have.
Okay.
It's, I wanted to do this, I just want to make sure I understood. I thought it said you have, the board has X amount of days to come up with a decision.
You do. If you feel you need more time.
I just want to know.
No, if you feel you have more time, you're under no immediate time pressure. You could talk tonight, go home and think about it, and reconvene another night to continue the discussion. You have 60 days from the date the decision was filed in order to in which to issue a decision, unless the taxpayer agrees to extend that for an additional period, which they always tend to, because otherwise it's probably going to get denied. But we would have to ask the taxpayer if they're willing to allow that to go beyond. But we've got plenty of time at this point.
So so we are speaking to each other right now with your help, of guidance.
I'm listening. I'm a listener right now.
Okay. So from my perspective, I feel uncomfortable if it is only us talking to ourselves at some point in the future beyond tonight. So, will the appellant and the assessor be present whenever we next meet if we don't make a decision tonight?
They will have that right. It will be an open meeting, just like it is
Okay,
tonight.
okay.
It will be, the hearing will be closed. Nobody will have any more rights to speak unless you're called upon.
Right.
But it will be just like this, only another night.
It'll be public.
Yes, of course it will.
Roger, it may be worthwhile to mention that they can't talk about this after you.
That we can't talk about it?
Outside of this,
Outside of
yeah, the
this hearing.
deliberations have to be here. You
You
can, yeah,
cannot
you will,
contact each other and chat about it.
I will read the riot act in terms of seeing each other at the coffee shop and talking.
So it's now or sometime in spring, if we don't get this right. So, from my perspective, there's some disparity of, particularly in the location and the usability of the appellant's abode. Forget about the garage and all that stuff. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, yes, it's located in a preferred location, if you will, but it's not used in that way. This is a single person. At least the pictures that I see do not portray expansive living facility. So I believe that a case has been made by the appellant in her very sidekick, okay. But I think a case has been made that there is some form of disparity, particularly when it comes down to taxation, and that the assessor has done, I believe, everything that she's supposed to do. The process has been followed, but the process is not specific to the end of the bell curve. And she's at the wrong end of the bell curve. That's what I'm picking up. So I'm saying that the appellant has proven that there's a disparity to a very high degree. What that value or what the assessment should be based on is, I guess, if you agree with what I'm saying, the board guys.
I have a similar thought when I was reviewing the packet myself. Pretty similar to you, that the assessor did something right. However, having a value on this property at $358 or $404 or even $358 seems like it's too high. Most likely going to be an outlier, even with the inflated market that we have now. A one bed, one bath, and the condition that it is, and the location that it is, it just doesn't seem like it matches up. And so, how big that disparity is, I don't think I don't think it's the 100,000 plus disparity is the key there. I don't think there's $100,000 difference between what they are saying it is versus what the assessor came back. I do think there is a disparity. I just don't think it's that big.
And remember, the standard is substantially overvalued.
Right.
That's,
And then the question becomes, what are we considering substantially overvalued? Is 50,000, 75,000, 100,000?
Do we have to quantify that? Do we have to quantify what you and I are talking about,
Right.
disparity? I mean, it's kind of,
And that's a good
disparity is an
question.
adjective that doesn't have any
How do we determine what
monetary value.
substantial?
the word you're supposed to, the word that you need to focus on, I think, during your discussion is, do you feel that it's substantially overvalued?
Okay,
So more of an emotion than a
Yeah,
than a
Well-
physical number.
yeah, I believe there's a substantial,
I feel it's substantial as well, yeah.
I believe they did not make their case. I believe that it's fairly being valued based on all the research I did on other waterfront property, and even on property being sold not on waterfront in Bucksport, and the prices of them would be almost an injustice. Just looking at 53, my own 53 Eagle Lane, going to every real estate on the market, and for the automated valuation model, the automated, which uses comparable sales, property characteristics, tax assessment value, plus price and trends. And according to them, which I think is high, their value, according to that, it values the property at $472,000. Okay?
They're
You
taking
can
a
laugh, but
figure from $405,000.
I'm sorry, I'm talking. I don't want to be harassed. Thank you.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
The other markets have it on there from 263 to 355, with an estimated selling price of 306. Redfin, which is used a lot, it's from 342 to 407. Looking at the other waterfront property on the small lakes around here, and none of them are under 300,000 that are comparable to this house, so I don't think they've made their case. That's my opinion.
In terms of substantial.
Excuse me?
Well, the words that I hear you say, we have to follow what the rules call for. The recognition of it's either substantially out of line, and the appellant made their case, or it's not substantially out of line, and the tax assessor did the right job.
I would say it this way. I would say that the number that the 358, that I think is what we're talking about, I think that's what the evidence shows, is presumed to be correct.
Right.
Did the appellant demonstrate by the evidence that number is, that the value is substantial, that is substantially overvalued? And I think, and I'm not swaying, I'm the one that's gonna have to write this decision, so I want to make sure that I understand. I saw, and you all may have seen differently, but you alluded to it, the sort of the $306,000. Now I think it might be fair to look at it and say, is 358 compared to 306, is that substantially overvalued, such that an injustice results?
It was 348, wasn't it? Isn't that? I think it was 348.
I think it's 358,
Was it?
610.
Okay.
Yeah. 358, 610.
Right, okay.
And I'll look it up.
Right. And that's kind of.
And I think the evidence that they had presented had it at 306 and change.
Exactly, based on the tax card and the other comparables added in. So 306 versus 358, does that constitute substantial as far as the price difference? And then that's where the subjectivity of substantial comes in. So essentially, $50,000 price discrepancy, is that considered substantial? Thoughts?
Well, seeing that I'm not paying the taxes based on any of these numbers, it's more than 10%, at least what I have in front of me. So it's a $52,000 swing, more or less.
Right.
And it's 10% difference now. Is that, so we have to decide whether that's
substantial, correct.
But thanks for helping me out on 306, because I missed that.
And that's how I saw it, and that's how I understood it, and I'm sort of putting words in your mouth.
No, you're spot on. That's exactly where my train of thought is using the 306 based on the tax card from the square footage for the price of the comps, coming up at 306 versus the 358, 610 that we're at now.
So, what is the difference on a $50,000 swing either way? Because 50,000 is
I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay,
Do you mean like tax dollar wise?
yeah, from the
If you had a
tax,
calculator there, you could do it.
the what?
It's,
$310?
it's the difference times the mill rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your mill rate?
Can I do that? 12.75.
What's 40 times 12.75?
I did 50.
What's 50?
$637.
$637 difference.
Again, I would,
Yeah, it's not, it has nothing to do with substantial at this point.
That's, I would like to just say that's a 17% difference. So,
I thought we
Is-
couldn't talk.
yeah,
Yeah.
the board has the right to
Recognize.
sorry.
but.
I'll recognize the 17%, yeah. So, yeah, because we were talking about 10%.
Yeah. Statistically, anything that's beyond 5% says that the base is wrong.
Right.
Okay.
And I usually use 10% as a rule of thumb. If
Yeah.
something's over 10% now, that's, in my mind, that's substantial.
I agree with you.
If I could, I'm confused. I thought we were not supposed to be discussing
Outside of this,
what the price is gonna be or not.
And I don't think they're talking about what the price is. I think they're trying to determine what does the word substantial mean to them.
Exactly, right.
And
We're not assigning a value to the house, but based on
presentation.
the presentation of their numbers versus that number, the difference between the two, does that
Yeah.
constitute a substantial price difference? And whether or not they provided proof that demonstrates that their price is closer than that price and whether or not it meets that substantial.
So, exclusive of being redundant, we're saying that substantial to us tonight, based on what we've heard,
Right.
between the two of us, right, saying 17% variance between the appellant and the assessor is substantial. That's what we're saying. Because that's what we're restricted to do according to the rules and regulations as, you know, we have in the 10 pounds of paper that we're looking at.
That's your decision. I mean,
No.
I
And
vote
you're
that
on
it's
the
not
other camp,
substantial.
yeah, he thinks that that price is
That's your
accurate.
decision.
do you have me help you make a little inroad? Remember, manifestly wrong means it's substantially overvalued
Right.
and an injustice results.
Which is why I
But
voted.
remember, there are two other standards. There's one, the valuation was fraudulent, dishonest, or illegal. Did you hear any evidence
Oh, of course not.
that it was? Okay, well then we can scratch that one off our
Yes.
list. What about, did you hear any evidence of they call it a systemic scheme by the assessor to value somebody's property, identical property differently, such that there was a unjust discrimination?
No.
Okay.
There was nothing nefarious as far
Okay.
as I was concerned, in what I heard.
Okay, well then, I thought I'd give you a couple easy victories.
Yeah, right.
So that you could.
It makes me nervous when the lawyers give me an easy. So, is it appropriate that we vote now to recognize the word substantial as we worked it through from a...
The motion on the table is that the taxpayer has failed to carry her burden to demonstrate that the assessed value is manifestly wrong, and therefore the abatement is denied. That's the motion that's been moved and
That's the question that we
seconded.
have to say yea or no.
Correct.
So, I move that the board recognize that the appellant has made her case that she has met the standards as evidence.
Let's make it even easier. As the chair, I think the chair just needs to call for a roll call vote on that motion.
Got it.
Okay. Roll call vote on that motion.
The motion that they did not make the case.
Correct.
Right, here's one. What?
I'm just, all those opposed?
Oh,
Aye.
Okay, now the question is, that being the case, I'll have another motion. It is, the taxpayer has satisfied her burden of proof to demonstrate that the assessed value has been, that the assessed value of the property identified as map 14, lot 78 is manifestly wrong, and an abatement in the amount of blank is granted in the following, in the amount of blank is granted. So the question is, what you now have to, based on the evidence presented,
come up with a number for.
have to come up with a value.
Okay.
So we're back to numbers.
Yep.
So, based on the numbers that I have, 358,610 versus 306,000, so that would be 52,000. That's the set of parameters. One is
Right.
Thoughts?
I'm running out of thoughts at this time, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, I'm as guilty as anybody in this room, except for people who do this as a business, which is not the same, just deals with real estate. It's not the same modes of activity. So I'm for recognizing, I hope I'm on the right train here, that that we vote to recognize what the evaluation should be, or what the assessment should be based on, that number. Is that what we're at right now?
You have to come up with a number.
Okay.
And a reason why.
Right.
Okay. So, is the reason why have to be articulated in the same language that's been used all night? Because this, a lot of it's technical stuff.
Yeah, no, you've based on the evidence.
I think, based on the evidence, the assessment number for the property at such and such a lot, whatever that is, should be $306,000. So I make that motion. Did I go the right road on, did I just make the motion because he asked for the number, or should I ask you to make, that you recognize that I wanna make a motion? I don't wanna mess this thing up, 'cause I don't wanna visit this thing.
Yeah, right. Do you have a number, is there a number that the board can agree on that reflects the value of this property?
So I propose it to be 306.
And why 306?
Well, it seems to be within the range of numbers that I heard flying back and forth. And I am not technically competent to negate the several aspects or the pictures that were shown, or challenge the process that this woman has gone through repeatedly for all kinds of homeowners. It's as subjective as...
Right, and that's the problem, the fair market value, especially in today's age, with the way the market has inflated so much, trying to determine what is fair market is a lot different now than it was back in 2016, 17, 18, so on and so forth. And when I was looking at the comps earlier, because of my experience in real estate, I look at it through that lens of comparable properties, and that's why I had the question about their process, trying to determine why there is such a discrepancy between what they're saying is the fair market value and what the assessors are saying is the fair market value.
Well, I've thrown out mine,
You're going up 306.
and I
And that
think-
was based on the square footage
right.
for the sale prices.
I assume since you think they didn't make the case that you are closer to 358.
I don't know if I'm close to 358. I do not believe that they made their case. Looking at all the other lakeside properties I've looked at and the properties here in town and the prices they are, I have to look at the reason why someone would want a lakeside property. And there's the privacy, there's the privilege, it's more desirable and the prices are higher. And I couldn't see valuing the property almost the same as a property on Route 15 that's for sale with 3 acres right now. That I think is contingent. To me, it's worth a lot more. You know, so I would say I am closer to 358 than they are. 306, I think, is
Do you have
low.
a specific number?
And I'm looking at, again, this automated valuation model and the different 6 different real estates I looked at for this property and the price ranges that they came up with. So if it wasn't going to do 358, I would do. I could see a value of 330.
And
I
see,
think fair.
I'm close to that. I was somewhere in the middle of 306 and 358. But I was coming back closer to 320, 325 to allow for a variance.
The reason why I chose more, am I allowed to say that, add to this? or-
Yeah, no, I
Like for the one property, it is on a lake and it is selling for 300. But again, there's no basement, it is on stilts or cement, with posts. And it's water drawn, it's lake drawn water, so it's seasonal, once it freezes up. And it's 300,000. You know, the prices are crazy. So, you know, I have to look at something and say, well, if that's so, then this has to be changed and that has to be changed. Or, what are people willing to pay too? So, to me, I'll go in the middle. I'll say it's at 330,000, maybe a fair estimate.
So you,
I'm in that camp.
all right, so someone's gonna propose that so we can vote on it.
Propose
I
it?
propose a valuation of 330,000.
I second it.
Done as far as I'm concerned.
moved, seconded.
Yep.
Third.
Any further discussion?
No.
Want to call for a vote?
Yep, call for a vote.
And I think we're online, so I think we need to go through and poll the board members.
What do you mean?
He wants to make sure we're awake.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, you don't have to do that if we're not, if we don't have. Unanimous?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Meeting adjourned?
do you understand?
I think I do.
Do you understand? Your board your Bucksport's code allows the chair to write, to delegate writing the decision.
Yes,
Would you like to delegate that responsibility to me?
I would like to.
And that's your call.
Yes.
Okay, I will do that, and I will share it with you to make sure that it is consistent.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay?
Someone needed you. Nice to meet you too.